Hey guys, tonight we slip back through time. No car horns, no buzzing phones, just the creak of wooden carts, the soft crunch of straw underfoot, and the ever-present hum of life in a medieval village. You're barefoot, your feet swollen, and despite having tossed all night on a lumpy straw mattress, the rooster's crow still shocks you awake. Your back aches before you even stand. Your belly already strains against the tight wool of your tunic, and your bladder. Let's just say you know the path to the privy in the dark by heart. Because tonight you're not just a peasant, you're a pregnant peasant. And no, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You live in a village so small that if a chicken goes missing, it becomes a mystery worth 3 days of gossip. Your house, if you can call it that, is one room with a fire pit in the middle and no chimney. Smoke curls out through a hole in the roof or seeps under the door depending on the wind. The air always smells like damp wool, burnt onions and your brother's feet. Your mattress is stuffed with straw. The floor is dirt. The draft comes from every direction except the one you wish it would. And yet you wake up and shuffle to the fire because that's what your mother did, and her mother before her, and now it's your turn. Pregnancy here isn't special. It's expected. If you're married, it's your duty. If you're not, it's your shame. Either way, you still have to sweep the hearth, feed the chickens, and help boil turnips until your hands are raw. Nobody tells you to rest. Nobody even asks how you feel. The phrase eating for two isn't a joyful excuse. It's a math problem in a world where there's barely enough for one. Historians agree that pregnancy was considered a normal part of the female life cycle, but normal doesn't mean safe. In fact, giving birth was one of the leading causes of death for women in the Middle Ages. You've heard the stories, of course. That woman down the road who bled out by the fire, the one who bore 7 and buried 5. You try not to think about it, but the truth hangs over you like the smell of the latrine always there, no matter how you try to breathe around it. Today is market day. You don't go to shop, you go to carry things. A sack of grain, a basket of leeks, maybe some dried fish if your father's had luck selling fence posts. You wear a tunic that used to belong to your cousin, now let out at the seams to fit your growing belly. It doesn't help that the baby seems determined to kick like a blacksmith's apprentice whenever you're walking uphill. On the way back from market, you pass the old abbey ruins and make the sign of the cross just in case. Superstition is its own kind of religion here. Pregnant women are told not to look at the moon too long lest the child be born a lunatic. Don't tie knots near your belly, it'll make the cord wrap around the baby's neck. Don't eat eels if you want the child to have limbs. You've heard them all. You obey some. You laugh at others. But deep down, every rule feels like a tiny prayer against chaos. You pass old Marjorie's hut and she gives you a look. Not unkind, but not gentle either. She's the midwife or something like it. She once pulled a stillborn calf from a cow and figured, well, people aren't that different. She smells like dried herbs and always carries a pouch of something she won't name. You nod politely. She nods back. It's an uneasy truce between your hope and her experience. Back home, your father is carving a spoon, your mother is gutting a rabbit, and your little sister is trying to sneak a plum from the storage shelf. It's ordinary. It's everything. It's the quiet, relentless rhythm of survival. You lie down for a moment, just a moment, and feel the warmth of the fire on your swollen feet. Your mother tells you not to get too comfortable, there's more wool to card, and the chickens still need feeding. You nod. You get up. Because rest in this world is rationed like honey precious and always saved for someone else. There's no doctor to see, no vitamins to take, no soothing playlist of forest sounds. Just your body trying to grow something fragile in a place built of wood and mud, and stories that always end in childbirth or battle. And yet there's a strange kind of strength in it, in the way you endure, in the way you keep walking, keep working, keep dreaming, that this child, this tiny unseen flicker of life, might someday grow up in a world slightly softer than yours. Maybe one where the fire doesn't always go out, where the mattress is thick, where there's enough bread to go around and the baby doesn't have to sleep next to the turnip bin. For now, you sleep with one hand on your belly and the other curled beneath your head. The wind whistles through the cracks and the night is long. The next morning your back protests before your eyes even open. The baby has shifted again, lower, heavier, and your hips ache like you've spent the night pulling a cart uphill. You roll onto your side, slowly pressing your palm into the straw bedding to push yourself upright. A few fleas scatter. You scratch without thinking. It's just another day. There's no breakfast waiting for you. You make it if there's something to make. A crust of rye bread soaked in milk if you're lucky. If not, maybe boiled nettles or thin porridge grey and lukewarm. The food isn't meant to be enjoyable. It's meant to keep you standing. And you need to stand because the bucket needs refilling, the pig needs slop, and your little sister just stepped in something unholy behind the goat shed. Being pregnant doesn't make you precious here. It just adds one more layer of expectation. Your mother watches you like a hawk, not to care, but to make sure you're not slacking. "We all did it," she mutters when you lean against the wall to catch your breath. With twins even. That story again. Always twins. Always during winter. Always while still grinding oats and spinning wool by lamplight. You smile faintly. You do not remind her that one of those twins didn't make it past a fortnight. Your chores today involve mending a wool tunic, which might sound restful, until you realise the fire's barely keeping the cold out, and your fingers are so swollen it takes twice as long to thread the needle. You prick yourself. Twice. The blood stains the fabric, but you fold it carefully anyway. Who has spare wool to waste? Later, your neighbour drops by with a basket of turnips and a flurry of gossip. A girl in the next village over unmarried pregnant and now vanished. They say she ran off with a soldier, your neighbour whispers with glee. Or maybe the wolves got her. She shrugs, as if both outcomes are equally believable. Then she eyes your belly and adds, "You're lucky to be wed." You nod because that's the correct response, but in your mind you're imagining the road beyond the trees. And the wolves. Historians still argue whether women in medieval villages had any real agency, or whether the illusion of choice was just that illusion. Some records suggest that women occasionally sought annulments, left bad marriages, or joined convents to escape. Others insist such tales were rare and mostly fictionalized by later romantics. You're not sure what's true. All you know is that leaving costs more than staying, and staying might cost you everything. At midday, your brother returns with news the tanner's apprentice broke his arm trying to shoe a mule. Everyone's talking about it like it's a tournament injury. Harwin's name isn't mentioned, but you catch your father glancing your way. Quietly, you wonder if he's doing sums in his head adjusting your worth now that the tanner's help is limping. That night, the cramps begin. They're not serious. Not yet. Just small stabs low in your belly like the baby's trying out a knife set. You lie on your side again and try to breathe through them. Your mother says it's normal. The midwife agrees. "The child's settling," she mutters, mixing something sharp-smelling in a cracked clay bowl. It means they're strong. You want to believe her. But it's hard to feel reassured when the pain shoots up your spine and leaves your toes tingling. Eventually you sleep, dreamless heavy like falling into water. But the dreams come back near dawn, strange ones. A woman with bird wings, a rope tied to your ankle, a table covered in blood and bread. You wake sweating even though it's cold enough to see your breath. That day you're sent to the stream with a bundle of linens to wash. You hate this task. The water's glacial, your back is killing you, and the rocks you kneel on feel like insults from God. But the linens must be clean. Always the linens, even if you bleed all over them again later. There's a moment when you pause hands submerged, staring at your reflection. You look older than your 17 years. Tired, sallow, and your hair's escaping the scarf again. You retuck it mechanically, then glance around. No one's watching. You whisper please. You're not sure what you're asking for, but it feels important. Nearby a bird sings like it doesn't know any better. The sound is so cheerful it hurts your teeth. One of the strangest facts about medieval pregnancy. They didn't understand what caused pain during labour. They knew it happened. They had terms for it, the breaking hour, the bowing of the spine. But the how and why, complete mystery. Some thought it was punishment for Eve. Others said it was God testing a woman's soul. Still others claimed it was the baby fighting its way out. You prefer that one. It makes the child seem braver. The pain returns that night just for a moment, sharp and sudden. You freeze, count to 10 and feel it fade again. You tell no one, because if it's coming early you don't want to know. Not yet. You wake before the rooster crows. Not because you're diligent or even hungry, your stomach is too unsettled for either, but because the dream wouldn't let go. This time you were walking through the village barefoot, your belly huge, dragging behind you like a cart. Every window you passed held someone watching, not speaking. just watching, silent, unmoving like carved saints. Outside, frost clings to the edges of the shutters. The fire's gone out. Again. You try to stretch, but your back has other plans. It crunches and cracks like old thatch under weight. The baby shifts and something inside your ribs protests. You breathe shallowly, lips parting, like you're trying to sip the air without letting it touch you. Downstairs, your mother is stirring oats over the fire she's just revived. Your father sharpens a blade at the table. Nobody speaks until your brother sneezes loudly, and someone huffs in annoyance. The mood is heavy like bread left to rise too long. You sit and force a spoonful into your mouth. It's gluey and grey and tastes faintly of ashes, but it's warm. You chew. You swallow. You do not gag. You count that as a win. The only thing worse than being pregnant in a medieval village is being visibly pregnant, because now you're not just a girl with swelling ankles and salt cravings. You're a subject of public speculation, a walking conversation starter. On the way to fetch water, a neighbour squints at your belly and says, "Looks like a boy." They sit lower. Another swears it's a girl because it's stolen your looks. A third grabs your wrist and mutters a charm just in case you're cursed. It's strange, isn't it? How you become a shared object, a vessel, a field of old wives' tales and communal judgment, and yet no one offers to carry your bucket. You hear stories, half true, half wished, about the woman in a nearby hamlet who gave birth in the middle of spinning wool barely missed a beat, about the healer's apprentice who bore twins and died before she could name them, about the village priest who insisted any woman who cried during childbirth had let the devil into her lungs. Historians still debate just how accurate these stories were. Was childbirth really seen as punishment, or was it just survival painted with holy language and masculine shame? What we do know, women often gave birth, kneeling, gripping rope or wood for strength. Pain relief ranged from warm ale to whispered charms. Midwives carried knives not to cut but to ward off spirits, and sometimes, just sometimes, they used them anyway. This knowledge flickers at the back of your mind when later that day you see Marjorie. Marjorie is the midwife's niece. She's only a year older than you, but she looks 10 years more worn. She delivered a stillborn last spring and hasn't smiled since. Now she walks with a limp and a basket full of dried mint, and when she sees you, she nods once. Her eyes scan your belly, then your face. She doesn't say anything, but you know she knows. You clutch your shawl tighter and walk on. Back home, you sit near the hearth and pretend to sew. The needle slips twice, once drawing a thread of blood. Your mother tuts softly and hands you a clean scrap of cloth. She doesn't ask if you're all right. The wind outside howls low and mournful. Your father wedges more logs into the fire, their resin popping like distant drum beats. You can feel the draft through the walls. Winter's still lurking, still deciding whether to leave. Later, while rubbing oil into your calves to ease the cramps, you remember a story the travelling tinker told once, that in some distant land women laboured in warm pools of water surrounded by women who sang. No screaming, no blood on straw, just steam and breath and voices. You'd laughed at the time. Now you wonder if that was his joke or your hope. Because here it's straw on the floor and ragged linens, a chipped bowl of tepid broth, a woman who knows herbs and pain and not much else, and if you're lucky, a quiet baby at the end of it. If not, well, you've already seen how fast they bury small things here. Tonight, as you lie down, you run your hands across your belly. You speak softly, mostly to yourself. Not yet. Please, not yet. The baby kicks in response. Maybe a foot, maybe an elbow. It presses against your skin like a question, and you don't have the answer. Just before sleep takes you, you remember something your grandmother once said. Pain sharpens you, but love dulls the blade. You'd thought it poetic then. Now it just feels like something she whispered to herself while bleeding. By dawn, your lower back is barking like a dog chained too long. You wince as you sit up, pushing slowly with your arms like an old woman, which, let's be honest, you feel like these days. There's a kind of betrayal happening inside your body. It no longer moves how you tell it to, but how the child inside commands it. Your feet swell like risen dough. Your bladder plays cruel tricks on your sleep, and your bones, especially your hips, grind with every movement, like poorly fitted millstones. Still, there's bread to knead. Pregnant or not, the day doesn't wait, and nobody, especially not your mother, is about to say, "Oh no, dear, put your feet up. We'll manage without you," because they won't, and they wouldn't. You find yourself elbow deep in flour, the heat of the hearth sticking sweat to your brow despite the cold. Every so often a tightening passes through your belly. Not painful exactly, just firm like a reminder. Not yet, but soon. You hum to the baby. Nothing you recognize, just a soft chain of sounds, a tether to keep the panic from rising. You don't say it aloud, but you are terrified. Not just of the pain, though, that too, but of the aftermath, the uncertainty. Will you be yourself again, or does part of you vanish after this? There's no answer in the dough. Later, you fetch kindling from behind the barn. The path is slick with frost, and you walk with care, both hands resting over your belly like you're guarding treasure and secret at once. In the distance, a crow calls and a dog barks. Ordinary sounds, but your nerves are a drum now, every thud echoes. And then you see her, Ethel. She's older than most grandmothers, her back curved like a question mark, but her eyes are sharp as fresh-cut thatch. She sits by the well with a basket of onions and a mouthful of opinions. "You're close," she says before you speak. You nod because there's no sense pretending. She smiles gap-toothed and strange. First's the hardest, but it teaches you everything you forgot you didn't know. You blink. Sometimes the elderly speak in riddles, sometimes in warnings. With Ethel, it's both. She leans closer. You'll want someone who knows how to tie the belly. Ah, yes. The belly band. A strip of cloth, usually wool or linen, tied tightly around the stomach in the later months. Supposed to help hold the baby in, but also believed to align the womb, fend off evil spirits, and soothe cramps. Some say it's superstition. Others swear by it. Historians still argue whether such bindings were more spiritual or practical. Most agree they were one of the few comforts women could actually control during pregnancy. You take Ethel's advice. That night your mother digs out an old belly cloth from the bottom of a chest. It smells of rosemary and lard. You tie it carefully, and for a moment, just a flicker, you feel held. But comfort is fleeting, because the next day the priest makes a visit. He doesn't knock. He never does. Just appears in the doorway, robes trailing, breath white in the air. His presence is cold and final like a verdict. Your mother wipes her hands. Your father stands straighter. You try to make yourself small, which is difficult when you feel like a walking barn. He mutters. Blessings ask questions that sound more like accusations. Have you confessed? Have you abstained from wicked thoughts? Do you understand the sanctity of the life you carry? You nod, you nod, you nod. You do not mention the dream you had last night, where you ran into the forest and gave birth beneath a tree alone, your scream echoing like thunder. You do not mention that in the dream you were smiling. Instead, you bow your head and accept the blessing. It smells like ash. That night, you notice your ankles are gone, replaced by puffy stumps as if someone filled your feet with porridge. You prop them up, grimace, then laugh, because what else is there? You're becoming less person, more swollen symbol. Your brother offers you a dried apple slice. He never shares. You take it and thank him with your eyes. Maybe he's scared too. You fall asleep sitting up, and dream again. This time it's raining, and you're on a boat made of bread, sailing past familiar faces who don't wave. The child in your arms is silent. The sky is a woven blanket unraveling. When you wake, your hands are cramping, your jaw clenched. You don't remember screaming. Just your mother standing beside the bed, lips pressed in a firm line. She says soon, and you nod though your chest aches. Because soon doesn't feel like a promise. It feels like a sentence. You wake with the uneasy feeling that your body has changed overnight. Not drastically. You're still you mostly. But your center of gravity has shifted again. The swell of your belly now feels like a tide pulling everything forward, and your joints crack like old wood when you move. Your skin itches where it stretches. You miss being able to sleep on your stomach or even on your side without feeling like you're squashing something important. You shuffle toward the hearth, passing the chipped mirror that hangs by the door. You glance at your reflection and flinch. There's a woman in there, yes, but she's grown hollow in the cheeks, wide at the hips, and oddly distant in the eyes. She looks like someone doing a very convincing impression of you. You touch your belly almost to prove you're still here, still whole, still trying. Then comes the noise. It's the midwife. Not because the baby's on its way, not yet, but because your mother has summoned her for what she calls a proper look-over. Her name is Agnette, and she's seen more babies than most priests have seen sins. She arrives with a satchel full of herbs, cloth, and tools you don't recognize. You half expect her to pull out a live chicken and start chanting. But she's brisk, businesslike, and surprisingly kind. She feels your belly with strong, warm hands pressing in places that make your breath hitch. She listens with her cheek against your skin, murmuring softly. Then she nods once. All in place. Big one, though. You don't ask what that means. You just note the way your mother's lips press tighter. Agnette rummages through her satchel and hands you a pouch of dried raspberry leaf. Steep this in hot water once a day. Helps the wound prepare. Eases pains. You nod, tucking the pouch into your apron. You won't lie, some part of you is grateful to be given anything that resembles control. Raspberry leaf tea, by the way, was widely used across medieval Europe by women in late pregnancy, believed to tone the uterus and prepare it for labour. Modern science hasn't fully confirmed this. Historians and herbalists still debate its efficacy, but the belief persists even now. Agnette also checks your legs and hands. Still swelling, but no spots in your vision yet. You blink. Should there be? Hopefully not. She doesn't elaborate. That's always a little worrying. Before she leaves, Agnette presses something else into your palm, a carved bit of wood shaped like a bird. For luck, she says. You turn it over in your hand, feeling its tiny smooth wings. It doesn't seem particularly lucky, but you nod and thank her anyway. After she's gone, your mother sighs, not a loud sigh, but the kind that seems to deflate a person from the inside. She folds linens without looking at you. Later that day, while you sit by the window weaving nettle fibres into thread, you overhear your father speaking to someone at the door. It's Harwin. Again. He doesn't come inside, just says something about a cart, about needing help, about the week ahead. Your father grunts in response. Then a phrase low but sharp, "We'll make sure she's ready." You're not sure who says it. Maybe both of them. That evening you drink the tea. It's bitter. Tastes like the edge of an old leaf and something else you can't quite name. You wrap your hands around the cup, staring into the steam like it might whisper answers. What does ready even mean? Ready to scream, to tear, to push something the size of a goat's head through a passage the size of a small apple? Probably. You feel movement again, a twist, a thump and wince. The baby is active today. Some believe babies grow restless before birth, as if testing the edges of their world. You're beginning to think this one has a sword and is staging a rebellion. Your brother pokes his head in, eyes wide. It moved. You nod. He inches closer, hesitant, then places his hand on your belly. For a second, there's nothing. Then a kick. He gasps and pulls his hand back. It's strong. You laugh. It feels good. Surprising. He beams, then runs off to tell someone, anyone. For a moment, you feel like a person again. Not a burden, not a vessel, just a girl laughing. But that moment passes. At supper, your mother slices meat into thin pieces and places the choicest bit on your plate without comment. Your father is quiet. Everyone is quiet. You wonder if they're listening for signs or counting the days. That night lying flat is impossible. You prop yourself up with every spare pillow and folded blanket you can find. You stare at the ceiling. You hum again, like before. You whisper to the baby. You say, "Please be gentle." You say, "Please be quick." You say, "Please don't leave me broken." Outside, the wind rustles the thatch. You don't sleep, not really. You drift. And you dream not of boats or trees this time, but of a firelit room, a baby swaddled in blue, a face you don't know smiling down at you. You wake with tears on your cheeks. Morning comes slowly, with a dull ache in your ribs and a pressure low in your belly that wasn't there yesterday. You sit on the edge of the bed and feel it again, a slow, creeping tightness like a tide coming in, then easing away. You count to see how long it lasts. 7 seconds. You wait. Again. 12 seconds. Your mother notices before you say anything. She has that sixth sense mothers earn through decades of child wrangling and weather watching. Her eyes narrow and she says nothing, but you see her begin to move faster, tidying the hearth, setting water to boil, checking the stack of cloths in the corner. You breathe through the next tightening. It's not labour, not really. Not yet. Just the body rehearsing. Braxton Hicks, they'll call them centuries from now. In medieval terms, it's simply the child knocking or practising its way out. Charming. You try not to think about the real thing. By mid-morning, the village is humming with its usual rhythm. Smoke rises from chimneys, chickens complain loudly in the lanes, and somewhere nearby a goat lets out a groan that sounds oddly sympathetic. You're weaving again this time. Flax, the good batch your mother bought, the one the red-shawled widow commented on. The threads run through your fingers like dry rivers. You pause when you feel something wet between your legs. Just a little. A trickle, not a flood. You freeze. Historians still debate how well medieval women understood the stages of labour. Some argue they had an intuitive communal knowledge passed down through generations. Others claim much was misunderstood, feared, or simply endured. Your instincts say tell someone. You stand, slowly, heart drumming in your throat. You find your mother at the washing tub, scrubbing a tunic with a ferocity that suggests she's been waiting for this. She looks up. You say nothing, just nod. She sets the tunic down. The rhythm of the house changes instantly. Your brother is sent to fetch Agnette. Your father disappears, maybe to the priest, maybe just to breathe where you aren't. Your mother takes your hands in hers. They're wet and warm from the tub. It might be time, she says. You nod. You want to say something profound, something brave, or at least memorable, but all you can manage is, I think I'm scared. She squeezes your hands. That's good. You blink. What? It means you know what's coming. She sets you down on a stool by the fire, a low one with a cushion she made just last year. You think about how many babies that stool has seen, how many women have clenched its sides, how many stories it could tell. You sip more raspberry tea. The first true pain arrives just before noon. This one doesn't pretend. It starts in your back and claws around your front like something ancient and hungry. You grip the stool and grunt without meaning to. Your mother nods. That's the real one. The hours blur. Agnette arrives with her satchel and her calm, capable hands. She places cloth beneath you, checks between your legs, checks your pulse, your breath, your eyes. She gives orders softly and people obey. You meanwhile contract and breathe and contract and breathe. At some point your brother sneaks in and is promptly shooed out. You think he mutters something about chickens being quieter. You lose track of the time. Outside light fades. Inside the fire burns steady, casting shadows that seem to move with your breathing. You kneel. You squat. You lean against the table, against your mother, against anything that will hold your weight and your noise. Your voice changes. It's deeper now, raw around the edges. You start swearing. Quietly at first, then not at all. You apologize. A lot. Everyone tells you to stop apologizing. At one point you throw up. Agnette smiles like this is good news. Means you're getting close. You don't feel close. You feel like your spine is breaking. And then something shifts. Your legs shake, your breath shortens. You feel the need to push. It is not a decision. It is a command from your bones, a scream from your womb. You are no longer a thinking being. You are force and fire and flood. They guide you to the birthing stool lower than the other open in the center. 2 wooden arms to grip already worn smooth from generations of hands. You sit. You push. It burns. You cry out. And still the baby does not come. You try again. You grunt like an ox pulling stone. You feel tearing. You hear yourself screaming. You hear someone else sobbing and realize it's you. And then, the pressure releases. And there is silence. A beat. Then a cry. High. Piercing animal. Alive. You fall back exhausted. They place the baby on your chest. It is slippery and loud and squirming, and your arms tremble as you touch it. You stare. It stares back, not truly seeing, but present. A girl. You smile dazed. Agnette nods. She's strong. You laugh, even though your whole body feels torn in half. Of course she is, you whisper. She's mine. Outside, a new day begins. The first night after birth is not what you imagine. There's no soft glow, no blissful silence. Only aching limbs, damp cloths, and a constant parade of needs you didn't know a body could have. Your daughter, still nameless, still red, and squinting, won't stop crying. Not wailing exactly, just this steady, uncertain mule that rises and falls like a wind-blown shutter. You try to feed her. She latches, then pulls away. Latches, then wails. Your breasts ache full and foreign. Your mother sits nearby, darning a sock with the same focus she used on your wedding linens. Her presence is steadying but not comforting. You think of asking for help. You don't. No one tells you this part. They speak of the birth, bravery, pain pushing. They speak of the baby smiles, fingers first cries. But the night that comes after. The confusion, the blood still leaking between your legs. The soreness that runs deeper than muscle. That part is whispered, if at all. You try to sleep. Your body doesn't allow it. Every time you shift, something stings. The child stirs. Your mind won't stop cataloguing. Did she eat enough? Is she warm? Is she breathing? You lean over the bundle. She is. But barely. So tiny, so still like a thing made of feathers and breath. You lie back and weep silently so no one sees. Historians still debate maternal survival rates in medieval villages. Some claim 1/3 of women never made it past the first week postpartum. Others argue those numbers are skewed by poor record-keeping, that strong communities and skilled midwives like Agnette tilted the odds better than we think. You don't care about the odds right now. You care about this warm, damp room. You care about the blood on your sheets. You care about the way your body feels like someone else is vacated, emptied, and left to rot in the sun. And you care about her. Her nose twitches, her fist flexes, her eyes remain tightly shut. She is real, and you are responsible. By morning, your mother places a bowl of broth by your bed. You can't sit up on your own. She lifts your shoulders with one hand and slides a pillow behind you. "You'll eat," she says. You do, slowly. Every swallow tastes like dust and relief. Later, the village begins to notice. A rooster crows. Children chase geese outside. Someone hammers a board back into place near the well. Life continues indifferently. Harwin doesn't come. You didn't expect him to, but still you watch the doorway. You imagine he might arrive with a gesture flowers maybe, or a woolen cap for the child. Instead, your father returns with news that Harwin's family has decided otherwise. The dowry was too thin. The child too early. Your shame apparently too loud. He doesn't say that part, but it's there in the pause. The careful way he places his boots by the door. You wait for your mother's reaction. There is none. She simply adjusts the blanket over the child and mutters, "Better this way." You agree. But it doesn't stop the sting. A bastard child. You are now that phrase. And in the village that means something. Not always cruel, but always noted. Always whispered. You will never be a full wife. Never be asked to join the weaving circle again, not without side glances. Still your daughter suckles. She sleeps. She startles at noises and curls her tiny legs when cold. Life goes on both in and around her. Your brother, to your surprise, brings you a frog in a cup. "I caught it," he says breathless. "For her. She's a baby, you say. She can still have a frog." The creature blinks offended. You keep it for an afternoon in a bowl, then let it go near the cabbages. But the gesture warms something in you. Not everyone in the village judges. Some women nod kindly when they pass your window. Some men offer you extra root vegetables without comment. Agnette checks in more than necessary. She pretends she needs a cup of herbs or help finding her comb. You let her pretend. In the quietest hours, when even the fire has dozed off, you look at the baby and wonder what comes next. She needs a name. You try them on your tongue. Alice, too sharp. Lena, too soft. Brunhild, too much. Then you remember a name your grandmother once mentioned, Edith. It means blessed in war. You whisper it. The baby kicks. You take it as a sign. You press your lips to her forehead and say, "Welcome, Edith. I hope you never need to live up to your name." You fall asleep holding her, and for the first time in days, your body doesn't resist. 3 days later, the naming is made official. No priest, no bells. Just your mother washing Edith's face with thyme water and tying a red thread around her wrist for protection. She says the thread keeps spirits from getting confused, thinking your daughter is theirs to claim. You don't ask if it works. You just tie it tighter. The naming is whispered to the hearth and spoken aloud at the well. You hold Edith beneath the early sun, her face pinched in confusion, and you declare Edith daughter of no man welcome to this strange world. You think someone in the distance chuckles, but no one corrects you. No one calls her Harwin's, which honestly feels like the smallest victory you'll get this month. Your body still aches in ways you didn't know were possible. There's a heaviness between your legs, a hollow under your ribs, and a strange clenching every time Edith cries, as if your bones themselves are trying to rise and help. You keep bleeding, not dangerously, not in floods, just a persistent rust-coloured memory of what happened, staining rags and sheets and your sense of self. You start wearing your hair braided back tighter than before. People say it makes you look older. You don't mind. Historians still argue whether women in medieval villages were treated as full adults after childbirth, or merely seen as damaged goods. Some records suggest they gained a strange kind of social authority, midwives, herb keepers, crones. Others imply they were simply shelved away like cracked pottery, useful maybe, but not beautiful. You wonder what shelf they'll put you on. You wonder what shelf Edith will land on, if any. Meanwhile, life keeps pressing forward with sticky fingers and bad timing. The barley harvest starts early this year. You're not expected to help, but you do anyway. You bundle Edith against your chest, wrapped in an old wool shawl, and head to the edge of the fields. The sun beats down. The men swing scythes. The women gather and bind, calloused fingers moving like spiders over golden stems. You're slower than you used to be. Agnette clicks her tongue when she sees you. She's too small to be out here. So, was I you say and keep moving? You tie bundles, you sort stalks. You nurse Edith under the shade of a poplar, your back against the bark, and your legs stiff from squatting. Flies swarm, sweat trickles, but somehow it feels good, like proof that your body still does something besides ache. You overhear a boy call you the girl with the ghost husband. You pretend not to hear. Later he throws a pebble at Edith's swaddling cloth. You throw it back hard. It hits his shin. He yelps. He doesn't try again. That night your mother scolds you for going to the fields. That's not your burden now, she says. I needed the coins, you lie. The truth is simpler. You needed the sun, the movement, the company of others, even if it came with whispers and side glances. You needed something to do besides sit and bleed and wonder. Your father starts talking about sending your brother to apprentice in another village. He's restless, he says, and it'd open space here. You know what that means. Fewer mouths, more room, maybe a chance to invite a spinner or herbalist to live with you, take on a boarder, rebuild the household economy. It's a practical thought, but it stings. You wonder how long before someone suggests sending you away too, not cruelly, just quietly. A distant aunt, a weaving commune, a nunnery even. You imagine Edith crawling over cold stone floors, quiet as a mouse watched by nuns who count sins instead of smiles. You shake the image away. No. If you're anything now, you're planted, rooted like those barley stalks, stubborn and sun-chapped. You start selling little bundles of herbs again. Marjoram, mint, yarrow, mostly to women. Sometimes to boys looking to impress girls with healing magic. Every coin goes into a sock tucked inside the hearth bricks. You count them every Sunday, not because they're many, but because they're yours. One evening, just before dusk, a stranger knocks on the door. Not Harwin, not a tanner. A pilgrim from the look of him. Muddy boots, a scallop shell tied to his bag. He asks for bread and a place to sleep. Your father says no. Your mother hesitates. You offer broth and a seat on the porch. The man smiles, toothless and sunburned. Good name for the girl, he says, nodding toward Edith. St. Edith of Wilton was a nun. Refused queenship, preferred needlework and helping the sick. You blink. Did she have a child? The man laughs. No. But she saw the world clear. Then he leaves. You stand in the doorway long after he's gone, heart-ticking like a beetle trapped in a jar. You whisper the saint's name to Edith as she nurses. Wilton, you say. Sounds like a place where people listen. She coos. You decide that's enough prayer for tonight. The leaves start curling at the edges. Not quite autumn, but close. You notice it first in the morning's air that smells like iron and apple's dew on the threshold, a hush between rooster calls. Edith sneezes when you bring her outside. You wrap her tighter and whisper, "Don't worry, love. We'll make it through this next season too." That's the rhythm now. Days measured by diapers and firewood, by how long you can keep the soup going, with half an onion, and a promise. You've become good at finding things that stretch time food patience. Especially patience. Your mother's stitches grow faster. She's embroidering little stars onto one of the linens, maybe for sale, maybe for Edith. She doesn't say. Your father has been spending more time at the far end of the field, where the path forks toward the tanner's village. Watching, maybe. Waiting. You're not sure if he's hoping Harwin returns or praying he never does. Historians still argue whether men who abandoned their wives were socially punished or quietly tolerated. Some records show them fined or forced back. Others show nothing, just a gap in the ledger and silence in the home. Harwin sends no messages, but someone else does. A letter comes by way of a trader's boy. The parchment is coarse, the ink smudged. It's from your cousin Catherine, the one who works in the manor kitchens. She's heard rumours. A noblewoman with no surviving heirs. A vacancy for a wet nurse. A need. It's not an invitation exactly. More like an option. Your mother reads the letter twice, mouth pressed thin. It's good pay, she says. She'd be feeding someone else's baby, your father mutters. You feel Edith stirring in your arms. She's already growing teeth. You're almost done nursing. Almost. That night you lie awake watching the rafters. Could you leave? Could you want to? Catherine says the noble house is clean warm, with honeyed porridge and songs sung by maids in the evening. You imagine soft slippers and long corridors fires that never go out. You imagine Edith staring up at some highborn child as she feeds them, confused, hungry, less yours. You bury your face in your blanket and weep into the wool. No decision is made. But your mother starts packing extra cloths, just in case. A week later a peddler stops by. He's selling mirrors. Not glass, he clarifies, just tin polished good enough to see your sins. Your brother laughs, but your mother buys one anyway. It's small, barely the size of a plum, and the reflection's warped. Still, when you peer into it, you see a woman with hollow cheeks and strong arms. She doesn't look afraid. You tuck the mirror into the hearthsock right beside the coins. Next morning you wake to coughing. Edith. Dry, raspy, but persistent. You hold her close, feel her chest rattle like thin parchment. Panic rises in your throat. You rush to the herb shelf. Thyme, chamomile, honey. You brew a tea so bitter you gag. You feed it to her with a soaked cloth drop by drop. Her lips purse. Her body stills. You don't sleep for 2 days. On the third she giggles. You collapse against the wall and laugh until you cry. Your mother says nothing, just lays a warm hand on your shoulder. That's her way. Comfort without sound. Later she gives you a scrap of cloth embroidered with a tree. Made it when you were born, she says. Didn't know if you'd live. You stare at the little stitched leaves, the uneven roots. Thank you, you whisper. She shrugs. Put it under her pillow. You do. Some nights you dream of leaving. Some nights you dream of staying forever. And some nights like this one you dream of walking through the woods alone, barefoot, your dress torn, but your hands full of wild herbs and your hair braided like a crown. No one calls your name, but you're not lost, just moving. You wake to the sound of a bell. A traveller's cart has broken an axle near the crossroads. You go to see, not because it matters, but because the village always goes. There's something comforting about standing among neighbours, murmuring the same guesses, offering useless advice. You hold Edith on your hip and pretend you're just another villager, just another body in the blur. The traveller, an old man with bright eyes, asks your name. You hesitate. He smiles. Never mind, I see her name in your face. You blink. He nods at Edith. You're hers now, he says. You smile faintly. I suppose I am. But later, as you stir the soup and listen to your father complain about taxes, you think she's mine too. Entirely. And that's something. Edith's cough fades. But something else rises in its place, a quiet fever that settles behind her eyes. She's not crying, not yet, but her head feels hot when you touch it, and her gaze drifts past you like you're a shadow she no longer needs to notice. You try not to panic, but the village healer is gone for a funeral in the next town over, and the midwife has a sour look every time she sees your door. So you do what you've learned to do, best guess. You mash dried elderflower into a poultice. You whisper prayers to saints you've never officially met. You hum lullabies that don't quite rhyme but have rhythm, and sometimes that's enough. The days drag. You sleep in brief shifts, waking each time Edith stirs, even if she just turns her head, or mutters nonsense in her sleep. You learn how to tell the difference between a normal sigh and one that means too quiet. Your back aches. Your heart feels like a drum with a broken strap beating off tempo. Historians still argue whether medieval village women had true maternal autonomy or were merely extensions of the home's economic needs. You don't care much for that debate because in your case, love isn't an idea, it's a sticky, sweating, terrifying fact. The fever breaks on the 4th day. She wakes at dawn blinking blearily and says your name not perfectly, but close enough that your chest seizes. You pull her close and swear aloud, which makes your brother laugh and your father pretend not to hear. That day everything tastes brighter. Even the bland barley stew your mother makes feels like a banquet. You can't stop smiling. Even the chickens seem less judgmental. But just as things settle, the messenger comes. He's not from Harwin's family, thank whatever stars are still looking out for you. No, this man wears the crest of Lady Alwina. Yes, that Lady Alwina, the widow whose estate your cousin mentioned in her letter. The message is short, a formal offer of service. Wet nurse position still open, room and board included. Discretion expected. Reply requested within 3 days. Your mother folds the letter with fingers that tremble slightly. Your father asks how much. The messenger shrugs. Enough, he says. You're not sure what enough means anymore. You carry the letter to your room and reread it in the light of the hearth. It's written in a strong hand. No flourishes, no hearts over the eyes if eyes even existed back then, which you doubt. You imagine a stone house with wide windows and quiet halls. You imagine waking up without frost clinging to your lashes. You imagine Edith in someone else's arms. That night you dream of the old woman in the red shawl again. She's sitting in your cabbage patch, humming and spinning thread with a spindle made of bone. You ask what she's making. A rope, she replies. For what? She winks. Depends who ties it. You wake cold. The fire's gone out, and Edith is curled against your ribs like a cat, tiny hand clutching your sleeve. You pull her closer and whisper, I'm not going anywhere. But by morning your resolve has cracked. You talk it through with your mother while peeling turnips. She'll be fed, she says. You nod. You'll earn more in a month than I did in a year. You nod again. And when she's older, she'll understand. You don't nod. Because you're not sure. That afternoon, your brother brings in a bird with a broken wing. He found it near the stream, chirping pathetically. He wants to name it Balthazar. You help him make a sling from an old sash. The bird looks absurd, wrapped like a nobleman in a ribbon, but somehow dignified. It lives. Somehow, despite everything, it lives. You write a reply to the lady's offer and give it to the messenger the next morning. You sign your name in shaky letters and don't reread it. The next 2 days pass like a held breath. You pack a small bag. You don't tell Edith. She wouldn't understand, and maybe she never will. On the morning of your departure, your father has already gone to the fields. Your mother braids your hair tighter than necessary. For strength, she says. Your brother gives you Balthazar. He'll fit in your pocket. You don't argue. You kiss Edith's head while she's napping. You whisper, I'll be back. You don't know if it's a lie. The cart arrives just after noon. It smells like lavender and damp hay. The driver barely speaks, just helps you up and flicks the reins. As the village fades behind you, you clutch your bundle and breathe deeply. You expect tears. None come. Instead, you stare at the road ahead and wonder not about what you've left behind, but what you've just signed yourself into. Because maybe this is the thing no one tells you about being a mother in a medieval village. You're never not choosing. Every single moment is a wager, a cost to trade. And you pray endlessly that the price won't be your soul. The journey takes half a day. You ride in silence, the cart creaking with each rut and stone, until the village disappears behind a curtain of trees, and you stop glancing back. The road narrows, winding between mossy walls and hedgerows blooming with stubborn springtime violets. A squirrel startles from the brush. You flinch, then laugh quietly at yourself, hands still curled protectively around the cloth bundle pressed to your chest. Inside the bundle is a comb, a sprig of dried lavender, a square of linen stitched by your mother and Balthazar, the wounded bird nestled in a pocket lined with old wool. He peeps occasionally, a tiny heartbeat of sound, reminding you that something still depends on you, still trusts you to carry it safely through the world. The manor appears without warning, just crests into view past a thicket of hawthorn like it's grown from the earth itself. Pale stone, slate roof, high narrow windows blinking like suspicious eyes. You didn't imagine it looking so cold. 2 women wait near the gate, one young, one not. Both wear aprons, neither smiles. Name the older one asks. You tell her. She nods once, no more. You'll sleep in the east wing. Don't use the back stairs after dusk. And if you see the lady pacing the garden in her nightdress, say nothing. You blink. The younger woman offers a grim smile. She still hears the baby sometimes. Historians still debate whether the role of wet nurses in noble houses was more honoured or exploited. You're beginning to suspect it's both at once pedestal and prison, a place of soft pillows and sharp expectations. The nursery smells of beeswax and old milk. The child you're to nurse is a boy, pale and soft-cheeked, barely a month old. He does not cry when they hand him to you, which makes you like him instantly. His eyes are too big for his face. You whisper, hello, and he stares at you like you're a tree or a cloud, something elemental, not surprising. You don't cry either. That surprises you. You're shown to your chamber. It has a proper bed, a basin of fresh water, a rug. You set your bundle down slowly like it might explode. You tuck Balthazar under a rafter beam and promise him crumbs later. Dinner is bread and broth served silently in the kitchen with the other help. You eat in polite quiet, listening more than speaking. Most of the other women avoid your eyes. One finally leans close and mutters, "Watch the steward." His hands wander. You thank her. Then you go to the nursery and settle in for your first night of noble service. The child wakes twice. You feed him, pat his back, hum a melody you barely remember. He clutches your finger in his sleep. It should feel like betrayal. Instead, it feels like breath. The second night you dream of your daughter. She's older, maybe 5, and running through a field of thistle hair, flying wild face split in a smile you haven't seen yet in real life. She looks back at you and yells, "Race me," and you do. You run until your legs ache and the sky is pink with morning. You wake with tears in your ears. On the 4th day, Lady Alwina summons you. Her parlour smells like rosewater and vinegar. She doesn't rise as you enter, just gestures to the cushioned bench beside her. Her hair is in braids wrapped around her head like a crown. Her eyes are violet. Not metaphorically, actually, Violet. You'll care for him as your own, she says. You nod. But remember, he is not your own. You nod again. There will be bonuses, if he grows strong. She hands you a velvet pouch. Inside are silver coins, more than you've seen in one place. Your fingers shake. Do you miss her? She asks suddenly. You look up startled. My daughter, she says almost to herself. She was 5 when the fever came. Same eyes as my husband, same laugh. We buried her in the orchard. 2nd row, beneath the peach tree. You swallow hard. I bought 3 wet nurses before you, she adds almost lazily. 1 stole jewellery. 1 had milk that soured. 1 we sent away for coughing too much. She looks at you now directly. Do not disappoint me. You leave the room with knees like water. That night, the baby, her son, not yours, curls against you with warm sighs. You press your lips to his head and tell yourself that mercy doesn't need to be big. Sometimes it's just showing up again and again like bread rising under a clean cloth. You begin writing letters to Edith in your head. You describe the colour of the nursery curtains green, the sound of rain on the slate roof like someone walking barefoot across velvet, the exact shade of the steward's shoes, oxblood who wears oxblood. You imagine her face when she reads them. Imagine she will read them someday. You tuck those invisible letters beneath your pillow and sleep. Historians sometimes call wet nurses borrowed mothers. You wonder who's borrowing who. Morning again. You wake to birds and milk let down. It's strange, this rhythm, natural and unnatural at the same time. The baby's breath tickles your collarbone as he feeds eyes half-lidded with the lazy trust of someone who's never known hunger. You hum without meaning to a lullaby stitched from bits of your grandmother's voice and wind through barley fields. You wonder if he hears it, if he'll remember. After he sleeps, you slip outside to the orchard. You walk slowly, partly because your legs are stiff, partly because you're still unsure where you're allowed to go. No one stops you, though. The steward watches from the granary with narrowed eyes. You keep walking. The peach tree is easy to spot. It's blooming already ridiculous pink blossoms clinging to blackened limbs. Beneath it is a stone. No name. Just a carved circle. A symbol, maybe. Or maybe not. You kneel and brush moss from the base. The soil is soft here, freshly turned. You find yourself whispering a greeting just in case. Then you say her name aloud, Edith. It isn't your daughter's name. It's Lady Alwina's. Historians still argue whether noble women mourn their dead children more openly than peasants. Some claim they moved on quickly, trained to view birth as risk, not joy. Others believe the grief simply moved underground into songs, superstitions, and the silent tending of trees. You rise and walk back slowly. The baby needs feeding. Again. Milk feels endless and finite, like time. The days settle into a pattern. You rise before the rooster, feed the boy, eat bread, sweep the hall, feed him again, nap in a chair, feed, wash linens, hum, feed, sleep lightly, repeat. At first you count the days by moonrise, then by how many times the baby sneezes, then not at all. One afternoon you find yourself scrubbing a wooden spoon longer than necessary, just to avoid eye contact with the steward. You're not imagining it anymore. His glance is the way his hand brushes too near your back when passing. One of the other kitchen girls sees it too. She mouths, careful. So you become smaller, quieter. You take routes that loop around the main corridor. You linger in the nursery longer than needed. You offer to fetch water instead of flour. Anything to keep walls between you and him. The baby starts to laugh. It happens suddenly after a sneeze and you're startled, bless you. His mouth opens and out comes this ridiculous hiccuping giggle. You laugh, too surprised into joy. His fingers wave like seaweed in tide, grabbing at your nose. You remember your own daughter laughing for the first time. She was chewing a piece of cloth and thought a sheep's sneeze was hilarious. She laughed so hard she drooled. You miss her with an ache that never quiets, like thirst in your bones. Still you laugh with him now. The steward corners you behind the dairy shed. It's dusk. The air smells of curdled milk and lilac. He says something about your eyes, your hands, something that's supposed to sound like a compliment, but lands like a stone. You say nothing. When he reaches out, you slap his hand away. He snarls, says he could have you dismissed, sent back. You don't answer. Just walk away. Later you sit in the nursery holding the baby tighter than usual, watching his chest rise and fall. You whisper, "You're not mine, but I will not let you come to harm." The next day the steward doesn't meet your eyes. You hear he's been reassigned to the far fields, hauling hay and herding pigs. You wonder who saw. You leave a peach blossom on the stone under the tree, just in case. One of the maids gives you a pair of shoes, soft leather, nearly new. He'll be crawling soon, she says, gesturing to the baby. You'll be chasing. You thank her. The child teeters upright for the first time on a Wednesday. He grips the leg of a stool-gummy smile, wide as the sun. You cheer quietly. Clap your hands. He claps too badly, hitting his own chin. You want to write another letter to your daughter. You pretend she'll laugh when you describe this boy. You imagine her pretending not to be jealous. You tell her about the lady's shawl that always smells of violets, about how the cook curses in 4 languages, about how the baby's hair curls when it's damp. You whisper the letter aloud before sleep sealing it into dreams. A merchant visits the manor. He brings bolts of cloth shoes, ink and gossip. You learn your village had a flood, that the church roof collapsed, that 2 girls were married off in exchange for sheep and barrels of cider, that your father still limps from old frostbite. You feel a jolt of something, not homesickness, not grief, something rawer, like watching someone live your life without you. The baby gets sick, nothing dramatic, just a fever and a wheeze, but it lasts 4 days. You sit beside his cot, damp cloth in hand, coaxing sips of milk, singing tunelessly, rocking him when the moaning starts. On the second night, you fall asleep with your forehead resting against the crib slats. You dream of flax fields, of someone braiding your hair, gently humming low. You wake with a crick in your neck and a baby clinging to your sleeve like it's the last thing tethering him to the earth. He recovers. You don't. Not fully. Because now you know what it feels like to fear losing this child too. And that frightens you more than anything. Because if he isn't yours, why does it feel like your heart beats for him? Historians debate the emotional entanglements of wet nurses. Some say distance was enforced. Others say bonds were inevitable. One 14th century letter describes a nurse grieving a noble child's death, more openly than the mother. You wonder if grief can tell the difference between blood and milk. You hope not. You don't notice the seasons shifting until the lady changes her shawl. Gone is the heavy wool with embroidered snowflakes. In its place is something lighter, soft green, with a stitched vine curling around the hem. Spring has come quiet and careful, like a bird landing on your windowsill before you're fully awake. The boy he toddles now. Not well, not far, but enough to chase a hen and fall flat on his face. You kiss the mud from his cheek while he screams like it's the end of the world. 3 seconds later, he's laughing again. You are not. Because somewhere in the distance a bell rings and it hits you like ice. It's almost been a year. You've lived here, worked here, nursed here for that long. And in all that time, no one's written you a letter. No one's come to the gate asking for you. Your daughter has not appeared with her braids and her clever questions. Your husband well. You hope he found something to fill the quiet. Some days you hope it was a good woman. Some days you hope she burned his porridge every morning. The manor hosts a feast. Not for you, of course. Some distant cousin of the Lord is visiting. The entire place bursts into motion like a disturbed anthill, scrubbing, polishing, cooking. You're asked to help prepare sweet buns, the kind filled with crushed nuts and honey. You try not to remember how your daughter loved those, how she once wore one on her chin like a beard and declared herself Queen Pudding. The boy gets dressed in a tiny doublet and linen shoes. He fidgets with the laces, determined to untie them faster than you can retie them. You settle for stuffing the knots into his shoes and hoping no one notices. During the feast, you sit behind a tapestry holding the child while his mother entertains. She laughs loudly, a bit too loudly. You recognize the tone, the kind that makes your ribs hurt afterward. The boy chews a bit of cloth and falls asleep on your lap. You don't move for an hour, even as your foot goes numb. Later in the still kitchen, you eat a leftover bun in silence. The sugar sticks to your fingers. You wonder if this is what contentment feels like. Historians still argue whether women in your position, servants, nurses, unlanded wives, had personal agency. Some say yes, that quiet influence and survival required cunning. Others argue you were ghosts in the record, your choices only seen through the actions of others. You consider both views while picking nut slivers from your teeth. The boy learns to say your name. Not your full name, just the first syllable. Over and over like a song. He uses it when he wants to be picked up, when he drops something, when he's bored. It sounds like worship, or a spell. You tell yourself not to smile every time. It doesn't work. One of the older servants warns you gently. Don't get too attached. You nod, but it's too late. The attachment got you first crept up your spine and settled in your chest before you noticed. The lady weeps one night. It's after the feast, long past midnight. You're walking the corridor with the baby in your arms when you hear the sound, a muffled, jagged sob. You hesitate, then push open the door. She's sitting on the edge of her bed corset, half undone feet, bare head bowed. You see the wet linen in her hands. A letter, maybe. A cloth. She looks up startled. You offer no words. Just walk over gently, place the boy on her lap and step back. He wakes, briefly blinks up at her and presses his cheek against her collarbone. She holds him like something breakable. The next day she gives you a necklace, small, simple a token, for the help, she says. You don't wear it, but you keep it in the pocket of your apron. You dream of your daughter again. In the dream, she's older, 7, maybe 8. She's balancing on a fence post, arms out, tongue sticking out the corner of her mouth like she always did when concentrating. You call out to her. She looks at you puzzled, then says you're late, and jumps. You wake gasping. There's a stain on your shift where milk leaked during the night. You check the crib. The boy's fine, snoring softly. But you're not. You start asking questions. Where's the nearest post rider? How much does a message cost? Could someone take a letter to your old village? Most people shrug. One suggests the market day messenger. Another says, why not just forget it? You've got a place here. But that's the problem. You do have a place, and it's not yours. A new servant arrives. She's younger, prettier, smells like lavender soap. She's assigned to laundry, but she often appears near the nursery. Offers to help, asks questions. You feel the ground shift beneath you. Not out of jealousy, though, there's a pinch of that, but out of fear. Because this is how it ends. Not with dismissal, but with someone else rocking him to sleep. You try to stay ahead of her, be more helpful, more cheerful, more needed. You wake earlier, work later. And still she's there. One morning, the lady announces they'll be travelling for summer. To the coast, she says, for his health. They're taking him, not you. You nod. You smile. You excuse yourself and go cry in the pantry. The cook finds you, doesn't ask questions, just hands you a slice of bread with butter and says, eat, cry later. You do both. Historians don't record this kind of grief. The kind that comes from loving someone else's child, from stitching yourself into a life that isn't yours. But it's real. It always has been. The day of departure arrives with too much sun and not enough time. You fold his little shirts, pack his wooden spoon, tuck his blanket next to the stuffed mouse with one missing ear. You smooth the folds again and again, as if you can somehow press your care into the fabric. The lady thanks you briefly. The lord, he doesn't speak, just loads the trunk and checks the straps on the cart. Harwin is fussy. He senses something's different. You bounce him on your hip one last time, humming a tune you half remember from your own childhood. He quiets. Then she holds out her arms. You hesitate. A second too long. She repeats the gesture a little sharper, and you hand him over. He doesn't cry. He doesn't even look back. You stand in the drive long after the dust settles, clutching a pair of his outgrown shoes like they might explain something. No one gives you new duties that day. You wander the halls like a ghost. The kitchen feels too loud, the nursery feels too quiet. You pick up a rag and start scrubbing things that don't need scrubbing. You polish wood already polished. Rearrange spoons. Your hands shake. No one stops you. Later in your little room you find the necklace she gave you. You put it on. It feels like pretending. The new girl Mira is everywhere. She hums while she works, bakes little honey cakes and leaves one for you. You thank her, smile, chew mechanically. It tastes like ash. Miss him, she asks one morning, not unkindly. You nod. She says, I lost a baby once, in the fever. Can't see a child without my arms aching. You stare at her for a long time, then break the honey cake in half and give her the other piece. That night you sit by the cold hearth and listen to the silence. It presses against your ears until you can hear your own breath like waves in a shell. Historians still debate whether wet nurses were emotionally involved with their charges. Some say yes, arguing that the act of nursing created unavoidable bonds. Others claim it was purely transactional, another form of labour. You know the truth doesn't care about footnotes. Weeks pass. You write a letter. You don't know where to send it. So you don't. You just write. It begins with I don't know if you remember me and ends with I hope someone sings to you at night. You fold it, tuck it into the hem of your apron and carry it like a secret. One morning Mira rushes in with a bundle of laundry and a grin too wide to be good news. They're back. You freeze. She notices. Thought you'd want to know. You pretend to keep folding sheets but your hands tremble. You wait an hour before walking to the courtyard. The cart is still half loaded. A new wicker basket sits by the kitchen door. There's a smear of jam on the stone steps. Someone's already been inside. And then you see him. He's a little taller. His cheeks are browner, but it's him. He's in the herb garden chasing a blue-winged beetle. You call his name. He pauses, looks up, and then he runs to you. Not gracefully, not fast, but it's enough. He barrels into your knees with the force of spring itself and says your name clearly fully like it's never left his mouth. You kneel, wrap him up, and bury your face in his shoulder. He smells of salt and sun and damp linen. You carry him into the house like a returning king. That night you hum him to sleep. The lady stands in the doorway watching. She doesn't speak, but she leaves the door open a little wider than usual. In the morning he refuses to eat unless you feed him. No one protests. That evening Mira winks. You've been reclaimed. You smirk, but your heart flutters like a page turned too fast. Harwin babbles constantly now. Words come in bursts, half-sentences, mixed-up tenses, declarations like mine and no, and bug that somehow become poetry. He holds your finger while walking, drags you from task to task. He names the broom George. He names the cat Pudding. He names you Mama once by accident. He doesn't say it again. You don't ask him to. You keep the moment folded in your chest like a pressed flower. Historians don't bother recording that. No footnote ever reads, the nurse cried behind the woodpile. But you did. You still do. Because even when he's not yours, he's yours. And that is the hardest thing of all. You start to notice how people look at you differently now. Not quite with respect, not quite with suspicion either. It's something quieter, like they can't decide whether you're lucky or cursed. You're still a servant after all. Still sleep in a room smaller than a goat's pen. Still wash the same linens and scrape the same burnt pots. But there's a weight to your presence now, because you've cared for their child, their heir, their future. That counts for something even in a world where your name isn't recorded anywhere official. You walk through the village one afternoon errand for apples, of course, and pass a group of women threading wool on a bench. One of them mutters, "That's her," not cruelly, just curiously. Another whispers back, the wet nurse, like you're a creature from a tale, not quite real. You want to correct them. Tell them it's not just milk you gave, it was lullabies and stories and warmth when no one else was around. But instead, you smile. A small, steady smile that says, "Yes, that's me. That's all right." You get a better deal from the apple seller that day. Even he calls you miss instead of girl. Back at the manor, the lady has started leaving you little notes. Nothing grand, just thank you. Or he's teething. Or he likes pears now. They're always written on fine parchment with careful ink, like invitations to a secret club of women who raise children together without ever quite touching each other's lives. You save everyone. Slip them between pages of an old prayer book that no one reads anymore. You read them sometimes in the quiet. They feel like tiny permissions to remember. Historians still argue whether women in your position were ever formally acknowledged. Some claim they were often forgotten the moment their usefulness ended. Others believe they remained attached to noble households for life. You live somewhere in the middle, remembered just enough to matter, forgotten just enough to be free. One evening the Lord returns from a long ride and finds Harwin asleep in your lap. He stops in the doorway, surprised. You freeze. Then he nods once, not unkindly, and walks on. After that, no one questions where the child naps. The seasons change. Autumn makes everything golden. The leaves crisp under your feet. The air smells of apples and firewood and change. Harwin is older now. He talks more than he listens. Clambers over things he shouldn't. Names everything. You start keeping a tally of his favourite words. You carve them into a little piece of driftwood rock milk zoom dog mine no. It becomes a kind of prayer stick, a record of your shared world. One afternoon he asks, "Were you a baby too?" You laugh. "I think so." He squints at you. "Did you have a mama?" "Yes." "Where is she?" You pause, far away. He nods like that's a good enough answer. "Do you miss her?" You nod back. "Yes." He leans against you. "You can have mine." And just like that, you're crying in the garden, holding a child who doesn't understand the magnitude of what he's offered. You don't say thank you. You just hold him tighter. Later that week, the lady asks if you'd be willing to travel with them to the winter manor. She says it casually over soup. He won't sleep without you. You hesitate. You've never been more than a day's ride from this village. You've never seen snow that wasn't already trampled. But you say yes, because even though the manor is colder, grander, lonelier, it is also a place where he will laugh, and you will be the one who makes him laugh. So you pack your things again. Same blanket, same spoon, same worn shoes tied with a bit of string. This time he walks beside the cart. You don't carry him. He carries a stick and whacks the dirt with purpose. You tell him stories as you ride. about frogs who become princes and horses who can talk and stars that grant wishes if you're quiet enough. He listens with his whole face, even when the road jostles and the wind bites. That night, in a strange bed under strange beams with wolves howling in the woods, he curls into you and says, "You're warm," and you whisper back, "So are you." And sleep for once is kind. The winter manor feels like a fortress made of silence. The halls echo even when no one is walking. The windows are tall and narrow, letting in slivers of grey light that stretch like ghostly fingers across the stone floors. Fireplaces are lit in every room, but the cold still clings to your bones like a second skin. You keep moving to stay warm. Harwin adjusts quickly. Children always do. He chases the hounds through drafty corridors and discovers new places to hide. His laughter bounces off the stone and somehow makes the place feel less like a tomb. You, on the other hand, feel like an intruder. The servants here are different. They speak in clipped tones and look at you with practiced disinterest. You try to smile. Sometimes they nod. Often they don't. You learn quickly not to expect warmth from them. Instead, you focus on the child. Each morning you wrap him in 2 cloaks and thick stockings before he's allowed anywhere near the frostbitten garden. Each night you warm his bedstones at the fire and tuck them under the sheets. You rub his feet with goose fat when they crack from the cold. You learn the rhythm of this new place, when the cook bakes, when the chamber pots are emptied, when the noblewomen take their walks, always in pairs, always in fur. You're given a small room off the nursery. It's barely bigger than a wardrobe, but it has a door that locks and a tiny window that shows the moon when it's clear. You carve tally marks on the wall to count how long you've been here. Not because you're waiting to leave, but because time slips differently in places like this. It needs something to catch on. One morning, as you help Harwin dress, he asks, "Will you always be with me?" You freeze, holding a boot in your hand. You want to say yes. You want to promise him the world. But instead you say, "As long as I can." And that's the truth, even if it tastes like loss. That night the lady visits you. Not with orders, not with questions. Just to talk. She sits on the edge of your narrow cot, folds her hands neatly in her lap and says, "You've been very good to him." You nod. He's easy to love. She smiles faintly. He'll forget you, you know. The sentence feels like a knife made of glass, small, silent, and somehow worse because it doesn't break the skin. You nod again. I know. There's a long pause. Then she says, "But I won't." And you realize something strange. She's lonely too. Historians still debate the emotional connections between noblewomen and their children's caretakers. Some claim deep friendships formed across class lines. Others argue it was purely transactional. But no record can capture the way her hand trembles slightly when she reaches for yours just for a moment before pulling it back. You offer her tea. She accepts. The next day, she walks with you in the frost garden. 2 women, one noble, one not. Both bundled against the cold, both watching the same child hop from stone to stone, pretending the ground is lava. "He'll be a good man," she says. You say nothing, but you hope she's right. In the evenings, when the manor grows quiet and the firewood hisses, you sit by the window with Harwin curled on your lap. You tell him stories about brave girls and clever animals and faraway places where nothing hurts and no one is ever cold. One night he asks, "Can we go there?" You smile, maybe. He nods satisfied and falls asleep. You stay awake longer than usual that night, watching the snow fall sideways, thinking about places you've never seen. The days pass. Winter deepens. Letters arrive, news from the main village, talk of illness in the south, rumours of wolves moving closer. One letter brings no words, only a ribbon green silk frayed at the edges. You recognise it instantly. It belonged to your mother. You don't cry. You sit on your cot, hold the ribbon to your face and breathe it in. It smells of dust and time and memory. You tuck it into the prayer book beside the lady's notes. That night you hold Harwin a little tighter. You hum an old lullaby your mother used to sing, one with no real words, just sounds that feel like safety. And for a moment in that cold, vast manor you are warm again. Spring doesn't arrive with flowers. It arrives with mud. Thick, sucking, boot-stealing mud that turns the manor paths into treacherous bogs and stains every hem with a permanent reminder that nothing stays clean forever. The snow retreats slowly, revealing broken branches, crushed straw, and the bones of forgotten things. You keep Harwin indoors for a week longer than necessary, just to delay the inevitable colds and scraped knees. He doesn't protest. He's learned to draw. His favourite subject is horses, though they often look more like dogs with long necks. You keep the drawings, even the bad ones, tucking them into the folds of your mattress or between pages of your worn book. They are proof of something progress, maybe, or tenderness, or time. The lady grows restless. She paces the halls at night, her slippers whispering against the flagstones. Once you catch her standing at the window, fingers pressed to the glass eyes, scanning the horizon for something that never comes, waiting for someone you ask. She shakes her head, just remembering, and she says no more. You learn more about her through what she doesn't say, the way her shoulders tense at thunder, the way she tucks her rings away when merchants visit, the way she always places a second spoon at tea even when she drinks alone. You suspect there was another child, a girl maybe, gone now. Historians still argue whether noble women of the period were afforded any real agency. Some say they wielded quiet power through influence letters and strategic hospitality. Others point out their lives were often dictated by fathers, husbands, and heirs. But you know this silence can hold as much history as any book. One afternoon, Harwin gets a splinter so deep it takes both of you and the cook's sharpest needle to remove it. He doesn't cry, not really, just stares at the ceiling while you work. Afterward he whispers, "Will you stay until I'm big?" You say yes, even though you don't know if it's true. Because here's the truth, there's talk now. Among the servants, in the kitchens, even in the stables. Talk that the Lord will travel soon to court, to war, to something that sounds like change. Talk that the lady may go with him. Talk that the boy might be sent elsewhere for training. You aren't mentioned in these whispers, which means you may be left behind, or carried along, or replaced. That night you sit with the lady again. She sips her wine slowly as if it has answers hidden in the flavour. You don't ask questions. Instead you mend one of Harwin's tunics, carefully patching the elbow with a square of blue linen you saved from your old home. She watches you for a while, then says, "You've been more mother to him than I've had time to be." It's not an apology, but it's something. You say he loves you. She smiles. Children always love the unreachable. That lands heavier than she means it to, because you know she's right. Love for children is often shaped like absence. You tell her about your mother then. Not much, just a memory of warm bread and fingers rough with flax. She listens. You finish the patch. Harwin turns 7. There is no feast, no banners, just a quiet supper and a carved wooden horse from the stable boy. You bake honey cakes in secret. He eats 2 before bed and falls asleep with crumbs on his chin. The next morning the ladies' trunks are packed. You help fold the linens. You help tie the boxes. You do not ask where she's going, or for how long. She does not say. Harwin hugs you at the gate, arms tight around your waist, face buried in your apron. "Don't let anyone move my drawings," he says. You promise. Then the cart creaks forward, pulled by the same stubborn mule that first brought them. The dust of the road rises behind them and slowly settles back into silence. You return to the nursery. The walls feel bigger now, the bed colder. You sleep alone. For the first time in months, no one calls your name. You wake early anyway. Old habits die hard. That morning, you wash Harwin's tunics one last time and fold them with care. You dust the shelf where he kept his stones and sticks and pretend it doesn't feel like erasing him. Then, with nothing left to do, you open the window. The wind carries a new sound. Distant hooves. A different cart. Another child. Maybe a girl this time. You sigh. And begin again. You meet the girl before you meet her name. She arrives in a bundle of cloak and chatter, her nursemaid fussing over a scratch on her cheek and a missing ribbon. She's 6 perhaps, with sharp eyes and hair like burnt straw. Unlike Harwin, she doesn't look shy or fragile. She looks furious. "Where's the fire?" she demands the moment her boots touch the floor. You blink. "Pardon?" "The fire, it's freezing, and this place smells like soup." She's not wrong. It's turnip broth day, but you say nothing and lead her to the hearth where the coals are still glowing. Her name, you later learn, is Isabet, and Isabet is not quiet. She talks, constantly, about her pony, about her governess, a disaster with shoes, about how she once saw a man die at a tournament, and it was boring because he didn't even bleed that much. She is exhausting, but she is also lonely. You see it in the way she clutches her satchel at night, in the way she talks to herself when she thinks no one hears. You remember that feeling of being moved like furniture, of being spoken over, of being told to be good, when you aren't even sure what that means. So you teach her to read. At first she scoffs. Books are for priests and boring girls. You shrug. Then you'll hate this one. It has dragons. 2 nights later, she begs for chapter 3. You find rhythm again, but it's different now. Isabet doesn't need lullabies. She needs rules. She needs someone to explain why the sky turns red at dusk, and why bees make wax, and why her mother cries when she thinks Isabet is asleep. You become less of a nurse and more of a translator for feelings, for silences, for the confusing language of growing up in the drafty halls of power. She doesn't ask about your past. She assumes, as children do, that you have always existed in this place, that you were born with thread in your fingers and patience in your voice. You let her believe it. Sometimes that's easier than truth. The lady returns briefly thinner, quieter, her dresses looser in the waist. She hugs Isabet and praises your care, but doesn't linger. The cart waits. So does war or court or duty. Historians still debate how often noble families saw each other, especially mothers and daughters. Some say they were close. Others argue that wet nurses, tutors, and distant relatives raised more heirs than parents ever did. Isabet doesn't cry when her mother leaves. She just says she didn't bring me a ribbon, and refuses to eat turnips for 3 days. You coax her back with honey and bribes and a promise of drawing dragons on the nursery wall with coal in a spot no one will see, of course. She agrees, but only if you draw the wings. You do. She calls it the wall dragon, and kisses you on the cheek. You feel it for hours. Spring warms to summer. You take her outside, more into the garden along the orchard paths, down to the riverbank when the days are long and no one's watching. One afternoon she asks, "Did you ever want to run away?" You pause, say yes. She nods. "Me too, but I'd bring the dragon." You laugh. But later, as she naps under the birch tree, you wonder what she'll become. If she'll learn to speak with softness as well as fury. If she'll survive the games nobles play. If someone someday will take her to a table and speak of cows and coin and cycles. If she'll nod and smile and forget to scream. Or if she'll roar. The thought makes you smile and ache in equal measure. That night you write her name beneath Harwin's on the back of an old letter. Just in case. The nursery is louder now. Brighter. Harder. But not worse. You sleep more deeply. Dream less often. And when you wake, she's already dressed and waiting by the fire. Holding a book. Chapter 8, she says. You nod. And begin. It begins with a knock. Not the hurried kind that carries news or the lazy rap of a tradesman. No, this is deliberate. 4 beats. A pause. Then 2 more. You know that rhythm. Everyone in the manor does. It means change. Harwin answers, and even from the corridor you hear the scrape of boots and the whisper of cloaks. Visitors. Important ones. You're not summoned, not yet, but you feel it, that ripple in the air when someone somewhere decides your life might tilt. So you wait. Isabet is at her lessons. The kitchen hisses with steam and soup. You sit by the window mending socks with hands that keep stitching, even as your mind drifts. When the steward finally appears, he doesn't meet your eyes. They'd like to see the girl, he says. Which girl, you almost ask, but you know. You're not sure what room they've chosen, one of the long ones with too much wood and not enough light. There will be wine and records and faces you've never met, but somehow already fear. Isabet is scrubbed and brushed and wrapped in a gown with too many laces. You braid her hair yourself tight and even. She hisses too hard. Hold still. She does. And when you lead her down the hall, her hand stays in yours. Inside, there are 3 men and 1 woman, all in rust-coloured robes that look soft but scream money. The oldest has a seal ring that catches the light. The youngest barely looks older than you. Isabet blinks. Why do they stare? You kneel, because they want to know how strong you are. She squares her shoulders. I'm the strongest. You smile. They ask questions. Not to her, to you, to the steward, to Harwin. About lineage, habits, allergies. Has she ever had fever? Does she sleep well? Any incidents of a pause fainting. You answer in the slow, steady way you've learned. Calm as linen folded flat. And then they ask about you. Not much, just a line or 2. How long have you worked here? Are you loyal? Would you travel if needed? Your throat tightens, but you nod. You say yes. Because in this place the word no only ever means later. They leave with no conclusion, only muttered notes and pursed lips. But you know what they're thinking. Betrothal, or placement, or breeding. Historians still argue how early noble children were promised. Some say girls were matched before they could write. Others insist it was strategic only when the political winds shifted. Either way, the decision rarely belonged to the girl. That night, Isabet crawls into your cot. They smelled like candles and lies, she whispers. You pull the blanket over her shoulders. You're not wrong. She asks, if I don't want to go, can I say no? You don't answer. Because of course she can. And of course she can't. The next morning the lady returns. Not for a visit, for weeks. Her arrival stirs the house like a fox in a hen coop. She walks with a limp you didn't know she had. Her hair is streaked with silver, but her voice cuts sharper than ever. She takes one look at Isabet and says, "She's grown feral." You say nothing. You are told to keep the child quiet, to shorten outdoor time, to cancel painting lessons, because the lady has guests now and her daughter must not be wild. She must be small and pliant and clever only in the ways that charm. Isabet tries, she really does. She curtsies. She smiles. She eats peas with a spoon so delicately you want to cry. But at night she kicks the door. "This isn't me," she says. You sit beside her and stroke her hair. "I know. You'll still like me when I'm a liar. I'll like you when you're a thunderstorm." She softens, sighs, sleeps, and dreams of dragons again. One morning you wake to find a letter on your cot. Unsealed, anonymous. It simply says they are watching you too. No signature. No mark. You burn it before breakfast. But the message lives. From that day you notice things. Whispers stop when you enter a room. The steward won't meet your gaze. Even Harwin is more careful, more measured. It's not fear. It's anticipation. Like they know something you don't. And maybe they do. You ask your mother once in a letter whether you were ever watched like this. She replies, "Every girl is. Some just earlier than others." You fold the letter and tuck it into your skirts. Isabet asks why you look sad. You say, "I'm remembering a story." "Is it a sad one?" "Yes." "Does it have a dragon?" "No." She frowns, then make one up. And so you do. You tell her of a dragon that sleeps under the manor coiled in stone, dreaming of fire and sky. You say it wakes only when a girl lies, or when a girl is told she cannot be. She loves that part. You love her for loving it. But in your own sleep you wonder, am I the girl or the dragon? Or both? 3 days later the letter arrives. This one has a seal, red wax flattened with the image of a heron in flight wings, outstretched beak open mid-cry. You know without asking it's from the family of the visitors in the rust robes. You aren't allowed to see the message. Not the words, not even the parchment. But the entire house seems to shift once it arrives. Chairs get polished. Bread is baked. And the lady smiles in a way you've never seen before, not joy, not kindness. Satisfaction, like a gardener seeing a sprout push through after weeks of watching dry dirt. Isabet is taken to the sewing room. New gowns are measured. Not made, yet just drafted, long hems, narrow sleeves, stiff collars. She looks at the sketches and frowns. Why do they all look so small? You reply, because they're for a girl who doesn't run. She nods like she understands. But later you find her with ink stains on her hands and little drawings hidden beneath her pillow, a girl in armour riding a goat with wings. The goat is named Edith. The girl is named not Isabet. You don't tell anyone. Harwin grows distant. He says little stays later at work sharpens things that aren't dull. You ask once if he's all right. He answers with a shrug and a grunt. Your mother once said men don't speak fear, they ferment it. Maybe Harwin is fermenting. The next week the tailors come. Not just with fabric, with measurements and questions and uncomfortable hands. Isabet tolerates them with a mix of bravery and boredom, whispering to you when their backs are turned. "Wouldn't it be funny if I tripped and knocked the table?" You smile. Very. She doesn't do it. But she imagines it so hard her cheeks turn pink. Historians still argue over how much say noble children had in their own weddings. Some claim girls as young as 10 were coached for diplomacy, trained to become silk-gloved diplomats. Others insist they were decorations placed like flowers in the halls of more powerful men. But there's little debate on one point: the transition started long before the vows. You're watching that transformation now. Not just in dresses and combs, but in posture, in silence, in the soft way Isabet lowers her eyes, even when no one demands it. You start keeping a list in your head. Words she used to say, mud, pickle brain, sky scream. Words she says now, yes lady, no sir, I'm sorry. That night you walk her to bed. She asks, am I still me? You hesitate. Then answer, you're the version of you they think they want. She blinks. That's a lot of words. You laugh softly. You'll understand when you're 40. I'd rather be a goat by then. You kiss her forehead. I hope you are. The next morning it rains. Not just a drizzled, true medieval rain. Heavy, slanting, loud. It leaks through windows and soaks the herb beds. The hens scream. The boots squeak. Everyone complains. Except you. Because Isabet gets a reprieve. No visits. No embroidery. Just stories by the hearth. You sit together with damp socks drying nearby, and she asks for the goat story again. This time you add pirates, and a singing mole, and a dress made of fish bones. She laughs so hard her nose crinkles in that way it used to. For an hour you forget the seal. The lady enters midway through the tale. She doesn't speak, just watches. Then she says, "You're good with her." You nod. She adds, which makes this harder. You don't ask what this is. You know. Later, Harwin finds you in the cellar. He says they'll want her ready within the month. You pretend not to understand. He continues, "It's a good match." You ask for who. He doesn't answer. You lean against a barrel of apples and stare at the cobwebbed beams. She still dreams of dragons, you know. Harwin exhales. She won't after. And that makes your chest ache. You wonder how many girls lost their dragons like that. One by one traded for alliances, for security, for coin pouches with herons. You want to rage, to shout, to grab Isabet and run into the forest and live on berries and boiled roots. But instead you plan. Not escape, there's nowhere to go. But resistance. Tiny, quiet, deliberate resistance. You start teaching her words again. Not noble words. Not phrases about duty or grace. Real words. Like stubborn, like clever, like no. You make a game of it. What's today's word? Ferocious, she says with glee. Use it in a sentence. I am ferocious and I like jam. You applaud, she bows. It's not much, but it's a thread. And threads when knotted right can become ropes. Not the kind that bind. The kind that pull you up. The day of the feast arrives like a slow sickness. There's no official announcement, but everything smells of preparation, stewed pears, wood smoke, beeswax polish. The halls are scrubbed so hard you can see reflections in the stone. Even the mice seem too nervous to scurry. You help set the table folding napkins into neat crested triangles. You dust the candles. You scatter dried lavender along the windowsills like some nervous spellcaster trying to keep away bad luck. Isabet wears her new gown. Saffron silk, stiff at the shoulders, tight at the waist. She stands like she's been propped there, a doll made of sugar and knots. You whisper word of the day. She murmurs sabotage. You hide a grin. The guests arrive in procession. First the steward, his chain of office clinks with importance. Then the tutor, a grey-faced man who smells like pickled onions and has never smiled in his life. Then the family. The Heron Seal clan. They wear fur-lined robes, copper rings, scowls that look carved. Isabet curtsies. The lady bows. Harwin nods like his neck is made of oak. You do not bow. You carry bread. You pour wine. You hover just out of reach. And as you do, you listen. To the murmurs, the soft negotiations, the subtle weighing of lineage, coin and yield. It's not conversation, it's arithmetic. Everything is measured, even Isabet's laugh. She's told to smile more. She's praised for her quiet. She's examined like a field ready for sowing. Historians still argue whether these feasts were celebration or scrutiny. Some say they were rituals of joy binding families across land and ambition. Others argue they were final inspections, the last step before a girl was signed away like parchment. You believe the latter, especially when one of the guests leans close to Isabet and asks, can she hold a needle for more than an hour? As though she isn't there. As though the girl who once climbed the barn roof and sang to frogs is now a loom attachment. You carry out the roast duck. You clear the trenches. You smile when spoken to. You do your job. Until dessert. You place the honeyed pears before the lady, and as you turn to step back, Isabet grabs your hand. Just for a second. Her fingers are cold. Her eyes wide. You squeeze gently. Then you whisper, word of the day. She blinks. Now. The meal ends. Wine is poured. Toasts are made. A harpist appears summoned like a courtly ghost and starts plucking something vaguely cheerful. Everyone pretends to relax, except Isabet. You find her in the corridor, staring out at the dusk-lit fields. I can't breathe in this dress, she says. Take it off. She snorts. In front of them, under the moon, you say, pointing out the window, with frogs. And Edith? She laughs, but it dies quickly. I don't want to marry a heron, she murmurs. You nod. They eat frogs. She grips the windowsill. What happens if I say no? You say nothing, because you've asked that same question. And the answer again and again is silence. That night you light the candles in her room and wait until she sleeps. Then you sneak back downstairs. The hall is empty now. The wine drained. The platters bare. But the whispers hang in the air like soot. You find Harwin near the stables pretending to fix a bridle that doesn't need fixing. He glances up. They're pleased. You cross your arms. Isabet's not. He wipes his hands on a cloth. Doesn't matter. It should. He looks at you then. Not cruelly. Not kindly. Just like someone who's decided something long ago and won't be moved by a breeze. Nothing about this life is fair, he says. Then he walks away. You stay by the stable, long enough to hear the horses shift, the owls cry, the world carry on as if it isn't quietly crushing a girl in saffron silk. The next morning, Isabet pretends nothing happened. She eats porridge. She recites her Latin. She lets the lady pin ribbons into her hair, but you see the tightness in her fingers, the way she looks at the door as if it might open into another life. So you do something foolish. You sneak into the kitchen and steal honey. You bribe the stable boy with a plum, and before the sun's fully risen you have a goat. Not a winged one, not Edith, but close enough. You find Isabet by the herb beds braiding mint stems together. She sees you, sees the goat, freezes, then cracks into laughter so pure it startles a bird from the hedge. She runs to the goat, hugs its hairy neck, then looks at you with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispers, and for one perfect second she's just a girl again. Not a bride, not a ledger line. Just Isabet. You leave the goat in her care, and as you walk away you whisper the next word of the day to yourself. Rebellion. You wake to the sound of rain on thatch, a soft insistent pattering like the sky tapping a message into your rooftop. It's still dark early morning, but your body insists it's time. Your back aches, your legs twitch, and something low in your belly pulses in quiet rebellion. This is it, you realise. You're not just pregnant anymore. You're entering the storm. Your husband still snores beside you oblivious. You nudge him once, twice. On the third try, he grunts, squints at you, and mutters something about pigs needing slop. He doesn't understand, not yet. That's fine. He'll catch up. You rise, gripping the bedpost, the old wood worn smooth by 100 hands before yours. One step, then two, and your knees threaten to fold. But you don't call out. You don't cry. You do what generations before you have done. You wait. The midwife isn't even yours. She's the neighbour's cousin's aunt, the one with a crooked spine and hands that smell of thyme and vinegar. They call her Aunt Merelda, even though she's no one's actual aunt. But in villages like this, blood ties are less important than knowing how to ease a breech birth. She arrives before sunrise, soaked and grumbling. Her shawl clings like wet moss. Her eyes, though, are sharp. One look at you, and she nods. First time's always slow, she says, but this one has urgency in her bones. You don't know if that's a compliment or a warning. By midday, the hut is warm with fire and damp with steam. Aunt Merelda stokes the hearth and lays out her tools, a wooden spoon, 2 cloth wraps, a chipped knife she uses only if things go south. She hums to herself, tuneless and low, as though summoning an old rhythm only women know. You moan once, and she silences you gently with a palm. "Save your breath," she says. "You'll need it later." And she's right. Historical fact. In many medieval European villages, childbirth took place entirely at home, attended by a local midwife and sometimes neighbours. Physicians rarely participated. Birth was considered a woman's domain, and male doctors were generally called only when things were already disastrous. Time slides strangely during labour. Hours slip by in droplets or in waves. You sweat, shiver, gasp, clench. At some point your mother arrives, then disappears again. You see a bowl of broth. You think someone sings. It could be a dream. Then the pain tightens. A vice, a fire, a pressure beyond anything you imagined. You cry out, and this time no one hushes you. Aunt Merelda rolls up her sleeves and crouches low. "That's it, girl," she grunts. "Push like you're cursing the devil himself." You do. And for a heartbeat you are the storm. Your body is not yours. It is the world's. It is thunder and earth and river and scream. Fringe tidbit. Some medieval midwives used charms or relics to encourage labour, placing a blessed iron nail under the bed, tying a saint's ribbon around the woman's thigh, or even burning herbs believed to banish spirits that might block the womb. The baby doesn't cry at first. There's just silence, a horrible cavernous silence that swallows everything. Aunt Merelda's face hardens. She rubs the baby's back, blows softly, mutters a prayer, and then a sound, a sputter, a wail. You collapse, not from exhaustion, but from release. It's over. For now. They place the baby on your chest, warm, slippery, real. You barely dare look. It's a girl. She stares up with eyes wide as moons, as if she's just seen the world and is already unimpressed. Your husband comes in finally. He looks dazed, like he missed a battle and showed up for the looting. He pats your head awkwardly and says, "She's got your chin." You want to laugh. Instead, you weep. Aunt Merelda cuts the cord with a practised flick and begins cleaning. "Bleeding's light," she says. That's good. You don't ask what not good looks like. You've seen too many quiet funerals for mothers to need that picture drawn. Historians still argue whether midwives in the medieval period were more helpful than harmful, as some practiced unorthodox or superstitious methods. Yet in many villages they were revered keepers of life, and death knowledge passed down through word and whisper. As twilight creeps in, the rain eases. You rest, the child rests, a new fragile rhythm begins, but already questions hover. Will the baby survive the week? Will your body hold together through the bleeding? What of the next birth and the one after? Because you now know the truth whispered in kitchens and behind drying linens, the pain of pregnancy is only the audition. The role of motherhood is the real trial. 3 days pass. Your stomach still aches like something's missing inside you, though the baby sleeps by your side wrapped in a wool shawl that smells faintly of onions and beeswax. She's small, impossibly small fingers, like thread's eyes still blue with newness. But she's here, breathing. That's what everyone keeps saying. She's breathing. That's what matters. You nod because that's the script, but you haven't slept more than an hour at a time. Your breasts ache like bruises heavy and full, and when the baby latches, it's not a sweet moment. It's a bite, a wrench, a quiet battle. Your husband hasn't held her yet. He says she's too soft, like a squirrel pup. What if I break it? He mutters, laughing nervously. You don't answer, because she's not an it. At night, you watch the candle flicker and try not to think about fever, about the mothers who looked fine one day and were dead the next, about the word childbed, not just the act of giving life, but the risk of dying from it. Historical fact. Childbed fever, puerperal fever, was a leading cause of maternal death in the medieval period. Without knowledge of germs or sanitation, many midwives or caretakers unknowingly spread infection from one woman to another. A mother could seem healthy in the morning and perish by dusk. You shift on the straw mattress, the linen beneath you, damp from milk sweat maybe more. You think of the old woman with the red shawl, the one who warned you not to let them knot your fate too tightly. You wonder if she meant the baby. Because suddenly everything feels knotted. Your life, your body, your time. There are no celebrations, no cake or garlands. One neighbour brings broth, another nods from the doorway and says, "First one's always the hardest." Then she adds, "Better hope it's not the only one." You want to laugh, but your stitches tug. Fringe tidbit. Some medieval women were given hedgehog fat or boiled toad skin as postpartum aids believed to help shrink the womb or seal the body from further harm. Others were wrapped in tight bandages for weeks to press the belly. Flat again, a practice some still follow in parts of the world today. On the 4th day your mother arrives. She doesn't hug you, mothers in this world rarely do, but she brings a wooden rattle carved by someone's cousin and a piece of cheese wrapped in cloth. She also brings advice, most of which sounds like riddles. Keep the window cracked but not open. Salt the baby's heels if she won't sleep, and don't whistle near her head. Might call the wrong spirits. She doesn't smile, but her hands are warm when she places them on your back. She says you've done well, then after a beat, "Now keep doing." You try to nod, but there's a lump in your throat the size of an apple core and it won't move. Your body doesn't feel like yours yet. You bleed still in slow, steady drips. You wear thick cloth pads between your legs that chafe your thighs. You don't know how long it's supposed to last. No one tells you these things. They just tell you to be strong, as if strength is a switch you flip and not something you slowly carve from sleep deprivation and cracked skin. Historians still argue whether postpartum confinement was a kindness or a curse. In some cultures, mothers were given 30 to 40 days of rest after birth. No cooking, no walking, just healing. In others, they were expected to resume labour within a week, especially if the harvest was near. Some say confinement was a form of protection, others an excuse for isolation. By the 6th night, the baby won't sleep. You rock her until your arms cramp. You hum songs you barely remember. At one point, you almost drop her not out of neglect, but sheer exhaustion. Your eyes blur, your knees go soft, but you catch yourself. You always do. At dawn, your husband finally reaches out and lifts her, just for a moment. He cradles her with awkward hands and says, "She has your scowl." It's the first time he said anything that sounds like affection. You don't cry. You just breathe a little easier, because there is still firewood to stack. There is still bread to bake. There is still a woman to become again, not just a mother. And already someone's whispered that you should try for a boy next. You're up before the rooster this time, not because you want to be, but because your daughter's cries slice through the thin dawn air like a blade. The sound is sharp, urgent, and it sends your heart into a sprint before your feet even touch the floor. You grope in the dim light, lift her, press her to your chest, and whisper soft things you barely understand yourself. She quiets a little. Not because she's comforted, at least not entirely, but because she's tired too. You both are. Being alive is exhausting work. The hearth is still warm from last night's fire. You wrap a shawl around your shoulders, still stained with milk, and settle in beside the coals. A thin mist curls outside the door. Somewhere a pig snorts. A rooster crows late. You can hear your husband snoring on the other side of the curtain. He has the gift of sleeping through anything. You envy that. Today is the 8th day, which means someone will come to mark the baby. Not name no that came unofficially whispered between breaths a few nights ago. A family name. One that's safe. One that doesn't belong to a saint or a queen or a girl who drowned in the well. You don't want the baby haunted by history before she has a chance to make her own. But marking, that's different. That's the church's domain. A mid-ranking priest, dusty and travel-worn, will come and smear oil on her head, maybe sprinkle a few drops of water, maybe mumble something about original sin and God's mercy. And just like that, she'll be counted. Not just yours anymore, but part of the flock. Historical fact. In medieval Europe, many infants were baptized or marked within a few days of birth due to the high risk of infant mortality. Parents feared that an unbaptized child would be denied entry into heaven if they died suddenly, a belief that led to emergency baptisms and rituals performed even before official clergy arrived. You think about that as you hold her tighter. She doesn't know what a soul is yet, but already hers is being bargained over. Your mother arrives early again, this time with a pouch of lavender for your pillow and a jar of what she calls cleansing salts. They smell like sweat and vinegar. You thank her anyway. She watches the baby with tight lips and looser eyes. Maybe she's remembering your birth. Maybe she's mourning something she never said aloud. She doesn't stay long. Mid-morning the priest arrives. He's not what you expected. Younger, pale, smells of beeswax and travel dust. He doesn't smile, but his hands are gentle. He doesn't ask many questions. Just holds the child, says the words, touches her brow with a thumb wet with oil. Your husband stands beside him like a stone pillar. You seated, clutch the blanket like a rope. It's over in minutes. The baby sleeps through the whole thing. She's strong, the priest says. Some scream from start to finish. You try to smile. Your mouth doesn't quite make it. Later, the priest sits at your table eating barley stew that's too thin and bread that's too thick. He asks if your husband tithes properly. Your husband deflects with a story about foxes stealing hens. The priest does not laugh. He leaves at dusk. You breathe easier again. But that night your dreams return strange, soft ones. You're walking through a stone chapel with no roof, holding a bundle of twigs instead of a child. Every time you look down, it's changed. A frog, a loaf of bread, a bird with no wings. You wake up sweating, heart hammering like a festival drum. Outside the wind has changed. Harvest is coming, and with it visitors. Fringe tidbit. In some medieval villages, babies were believed to be especially vulnerable to spirits or fae during their first month. Mothers would place iron scissors under the cradle or hang garlic and ash bundles to ward off changelings, infant-shaped creatures swapped by mischievous forces in the night. Even if you didn't believe it, you did it anyway, just in case. You hang an herb bundle over the cradle the next day, not because you believe in fairies, but because belief is the only armour you have left. By the 10th day, you try to stand for longer stretches. Sweep the floor, heat a pot of water. Your knees wobble, but you don't fall. You're learning how to walk again in a way. As someone new, not just a wife, not just a girl, but a mother too. You hum a tune while stirring oats. The baby fusses. Your husband returns early and offers surprisingly to carry her for a while. He holds her like she might shatter, but doesn't complain. She's lighter than a sack of grain, he says, but louder. You grin. It's not much, but it's something. Your brother visits, bringing a carved toy shaped like a dog. He whistles when he enters, then immediately apologizes. He heard you're not supposed to whistle near babies. Might summon a devil, he says with a wink. You roll your eyes. He's growing taller, you notice, his voice deeper. A strange ache settles in your chest. Not milk this time. Time. Everything is changing. Your baby coos and kicks and fills your world with new noise. But you don't cry. You're too tired to cry. You just keep going. 3 weeks pass. Your body still aches in strange places. Your hips like shifting stone, your wrists always sore, your chest tender as overripe fruit. You barely recognize your own feet anymore. The swelling has gone down, yes, but they feel foreign somehow, wider, earthier. The days have grown shorter. Mornings now begin with mist, and your breath rises in clouds as you light the hearth. The child stirs before the fire catches whimpering in the sleep-heavy dark. You hold her close as you stoke the kindling, whispering to both of you, just a little longer, just a little more light. She's growing fast. Her eyes track movement now. Her fists grip hair with the strength of a mule. She likes to be carried, hates being swaddled too tight, and has developed a deep mistrust of cabbage smells. You respect that. Your mother says she has your nose. Your husband says she has his patience. You're not sure yet. She's still a mystery, but a warm one. Today is bath day. Not yours, don't be ridiculous. Hers. You heat water over the hearth, then pour it into the basin your father carved decades ago. It's cracked, but still holds. Everything feels like that now, fragile but holding. You dip your elbow in to test the warmth. Just right. Then you unwrap her slow and careful and lower her in. She doesn't cry, just blinks, then kicks, then laughs, a hiccuped little bark of surprise that makes you laugh too. You hadn't expected joy to arrive like this. Mainstream historical fact. In medieval villages, infant bathing was rare and cautious. Many believed water could enter a child's body through the skin, bringing in illness or spirits. Some mothers avoided full baths for weeks, relying instead on cloth wiping or herb-steamed bundles. Bath time, if done, was fast and quiet. You stay longer than you're supposed to, because it's quiet, because she's happy, because this small basin in this small room feels like the only place on earth untouched by judgment. After you dry her in the sun by the window, she yawns like a cat. Her fingers curl around yours. You hum something your grandmother used to sing, words you barely remember, notes passed down like inheritance. Then there's a knock. You freeze, because you weren't expecting anyone. Your husband is out in the field. Your brother went to fetch more grain. Your mother's at her cousin's delivering broth. The knock comes again. It's not loud, not impatient. Just insistent. You wrap the child, press her against your chest, and approach the door. It's the old woman again. The one with the red shawl. She doesn't wait for an invitation, just steps in like smoke. Her eyes flick to the child, then to the cradle, then to you. She's marked, the woman says. You nod. She dream yet? You blink. I don't know. She will. She lowers herself onto the bench like a crow settling into a branch. I dreamed once, she murmurs, of a girl like you. She ran into the woods and didn't come back, married a storm spirit, had sons with teeth made of lightning. You say nothing. She reaches into her shawl and pulls out a bundle. For the baby, she says. Inside is a twisted braid of herbs, some lavender, a ribbon dyed indigo, and a tiny carved bird made of bone. You almost ask what it means, but something in her eyes stops you. You accept it, because that's what you do now. Accept. Hang it where she can see, the old woman says already at the door again, and when she starts dreaming, write them down. You want to ask on what parchment with what ink, but instead you nod, because she's already gone. Fringe tidbit. In some parts of Europe, people believed newborns could dream messages from the spirit world, warnings or blessings from past lives. Dreamkeepers, usually older women, were sometimes tasked with listening and interpreting baby murmurs in sleep. That night you hang the charm above the cradle. You do it quietly, carefully, with the strange reverence of someone planting a seed they're not sure will grow. Your husband doesn't ask what it is. He notices, of course, but says nothing. Instead, he brings in a second wool blanket and lays it at your feet. You thank him, not with words, just with stillness. The next day, the baby laughs again. And it's real. Not a hiccup, not a twitch, an actual laugh, small and bright and wild. You're folding linens when it happens, and for a moment you forget you're sore. Forget the days ahead. Forget the months behind. You laugh with her, louder than you have in weeks, maybe months. It echoes through the rafters, bouncing off wood and time and silence. She laughs again. You promise yourself you'll remember this. Historians still argue whether laughter in infants was understood as divine favour or merely bodily wind. In some texts it's described as an angel's kiss, in others a test of the lungs. What's certain is that it made even the hardest women smile, And that was miracle enough. That evening the wind shifts. Again, colder this time. There's something in the air, something whispering around corners and under doors. Not a spirit, not a storm, just change. Your mother arrives with heavier blankets. Your husband stacks extra firewood. Your baby sucks her thumb and stares at the charm above her bed. And you sit on the floor beside her and say softly, "Dream well, little one." And for once you do too. The frost comes overnight. You wake to find the edges of the window kissed in white, each breath forming soft clouds above your lips. The hearth embers have long since gone cold, and your toes curl instinctively beneath the blanket. The baby stirs, not from discomfort, but from hunger, her tiny voice cracking the morning silence like a reed snapping beneath a footstep. You move automatically now. One hand cradles her, the other wraps the shawl tighter. You could do this half asleep. You probably are. But something about today feels sharper, like the cold has carved away whatever numbness kept you from noticing the edges. You're out of dry kindling. You fetch more from the shed. It's still dark outside, the sky barely hinting at dawn. The ground crunches beneath your feet. And for a moment you pause just to listen, just to feel your breath in this cold air, just to be alone with the frost and the dark. Inside, the fire is coaxed to life. The baby feeds, the room warms, and soon your husband rises with that particular groan that means he's slept wrong on one shoulder again. He rubs the back of his neck and grumbles about another cord of wood needing to be split. You smile without smiling. You're both tired in different ways. He asks what's for breakfast. You tell him oatcakes. He says nothing, just nods, which means good enough. Your mother arrives an hour later with dried apples, some salted pork, and a length of string she says you'll need. When you ask what for, she simply shrugs and says, "Things." You don't press. In your family, mysteries arrive like letters without wax seals. You're not meant to open them until you're told. Later that day, your brother appears. He's brought an old cradle rocker from a neighbour along with half a dozen jokes that don't quite land. But he tries, and that's the part that counts. "You look more like a person now," he says, grinning. "Only on Wednesdays," you reply. The baby sleeps through it all. Mainstream historical fact. In medieval villages, postpartum confinement often lasted 30-40 days. During this lying-in period, women were expected to rest indoors, avoid contact with strangers, and gradually regain strength. Some households mark the end of confinement with a small church blessing or purification ritual. Your mother insists it's time, not for church, but for you. She says it's time to be seen. You look down at yourself, the same dress you've worn for days, a shawl that smells faintly of smoke and milk, and hair that hasn't been properly braided in a fortnight. "I don't feel like being seen," you murmur. "That's not the same," she replies, and starts brushing your hair anyway. You sit by the fire as she braids, pulling gently, then more firmly into a long rope that swings down your back. The gesture feels ceremonial, like armour, like a story being retold in twists and knots. The village is quiet today. A few carts clatter by. Children shout near the well. A dog barks at nothing in particular. You sit just inside the doorway, baby in arms, and watch it all. Not quite part of it, not quite apart from it. Harwin walks by. He notices you. Of course he does. He lifts a hand. You lift yours. There's no need for words. He's not cruel. He's not kind. He's just part of this woven net you've all agreed to live in, stitch by unspoken stitch. Fringe tidbit. In some regions it was believed that if a woman saw her child's future husband or wife before the baby's first tooth emerged, it would curse the marriage with infertility or betrayal. As such, some mothers avoided letting their babies look at too many strangers. You wonder who your daughter will see first. A cart passes, a rooster crows, and your baby sneezes, startling herself so thoroughly that you both laugh. That night you wrap the string your mother gave you around a bundle of dried herbs, rosemary, mugwort, and a sprig of rue, and hang it by the door. She said it would keep the air calm. You're not entirely sure what that means, but in a world full of sharp winds and colder shoulders, calm feels like a reasonable request. You lie down, and for the first time in a long while the room doesn't feel too big or too small. Just enough. You dream. It's a dream without faces, without words. Just the sound of someone humming. Just the feeling of warm bread in your hands. Just the glimpse of a crooked path through the trees and the knowledge that it leads somewhere. Not escape. Not rescue. Just forward. Historians still argue whether dreams held more meaning for medieval women because of their limited freedom in waking life. Some accounts suggest dream interpretation was a form of quiet rebellion, a way to believe in hidden truths when none were spoken aloud. Others say dreams were simply survival's last comfort when no other choices remained. The next day the baby laughs again, but this time it's because of you. You made a face, some ridiculous expression you weren't even thinking about, and she erupted into giggles. And just like that, the fire of something ancient and joyful sparks inside you again. You dance her around the room singing nonsense. The room spins. Your feet are light. Your heart doesn't ache. Not today. Not in this moment. Because despite everything, the cold, the coins, the combs, the constraints, you're still here. She's here. And that for now is enough. You start to notice the way people look at you differently now. Not just as a young woman, not just as someone's daughter, but as something new, a mother. A role that somehow elevates and isolates you all at once. The baker nods with more reverence when you pass, though he still shortens your change. The blacksmith's wife offers advice you didn't ask for on teething and cradle heat and why you should rub onion juice on the baby's gums when she fusses. You smile, thank her, and do none of it. At home, your days take on a rhythm. Wake, feed, clean, stir, change, shush, fold, repeat. Somewhere between those moments you forget who you were before her. There are flashes, of course. The way your fingers still remember old lullabies your mother hummed when she thought you weren't listening. The comfort of slipping into a storybook voice when telling tales to your daughter, even though she doesn't understand the words yet. And sometimes in the quiet between dusk and dark, you remember dancing barefoot in the mud, once long before Harwin, long before belly aches and linen pads, and waking up soaked from another night of nursing. Mainstream historical fact. In medieval times, children were often swaddled tightly for months, believed to encourage proper growth and keep them safe. Some mothers used long strips of cloth to bind infants' arms and legs, straight, a practice common across Europe, though now viewed as outdated and even harmful. Your baby wriggles free of the swaddle. You watch her flex her tiny fingers the way her knuckles curl like she's grasping at something invisible. She kicks with wild, unformed strength, like she's reminding the world she's not just a bundle to be carried, but something that might one day run. And something inside you flickers pride, maybe, or awe, or fear. Harwin comes home late. He smells of smoke and tannin. He sets down a leather satchel, removes a length of binding strap, and frowns at a tear in the edge. You ask if he's tired. He shrugs. Aren't we all? Later, when the baby cries and he stirs beside you, he mutters, "Can't she cry quieter?" You don't answer. You rock her gently, humming into the curve of her hair. Her warmth sinks into you. Her breath tickles your collarbone. And you wonder how something so small could carry so much gravity. Fringe tidbit. In some medieval households, charms were sewn into infants' clothes, tiny wax amulets, dried herbs, or even bones believed to protect them from evil spirits or the evil eye. Mothers would sometimes whisper protective verses while dressing the child, creating a blend of ritual and routine. You find yourself doing it too. Not the charms, but the verses. Soft words half remembered and half invented, stitched between buttonholes and lullabies. Not for magic, but for something else. Hope, maybe. The seasons shift. Frost turns to thaw. The fields change from white to brown to green again. Your hands grow calloused from pulling weeds with a babe on your back. Sometimes she cries when the wind changes. Sometimes she laughs at birds you didn't notice. One afternoon, while gathering eggs, you spot a girl from your childhood. Her name was Maud once. Now she wears her hair in a tight braid and her apron is smudged with soot. She doesn't greet you with the same brightness as before. Just a nod, just a glance at the baby. And something in that glance says everything. She envies you, or pities you, or maybe both. Because even here, even now, there are invisible scales. Did you marry well enough? Is your husband kind enough? Is your child healthy enough? Are your clothes clean enough? Even among friends there is always measurement. You smile at her anyway. She nods once more and moves on. Historians still argue whether medieval women found sisterhood among one another, or were forced into quiet competition for security, status and survival. Some suggest village life, forged unspoken alliances, women trading remedies, and baby-watching duties. Others say the pressure to produce heirs, maintain appearances, and secure favour bred tension beneath the surface of every shared chore. You notice both. On wash day, the women gather near the stream. The baby is wrapped close to your chest as you scrub linens against stone. The talk around you is low practical yeast blisters, how many eggs the hens are laying this week. But then it turns. One woman mentions a name. Another says she lost it. No one asks what it means, they just nod. Someone mutters a prayer. You hold your daughter a little closer, because you know it could have been you, or still could be. Later that night, you ask Harwin if she's good. He blinks. What? Our baby? Do you think she's... Right. He frowns, confused. She eats, she sleeps, she poops. That's all she needs to do. But for you, that's not enough. You want signs, you want omens, you want someone to come to your door and say, yes, she will live, she will thrive, she will be clever and safe and strong. But no one ever says that. You lie awake and wonder, until her breathing lulls you, and the fear fades, just a little. Morning breaks with the faint crackle of frost on the window ledge, even though it's early spring. You sit up slowly, every part of your body feeling like it's been borrowed from someone twice your age. The baby stirs against your side, her little hand clenched into a fist at her mouth. She's grown almost too fast, chubby now, curious, staring at the world like it owes her an explanation. You wonder when you last stared like that. The house smells of boiled oats and wool. Harwin has already gone off to the tannery before dawn, like always. You find yourself grateful for the quiet. Grateful for a moment where your thoughts can stretch out without being crushed by footsteps or demands. You shift the baby to the cradle. She doesn't wake. Today is flax combing day. Not glamorous, not clean, but necessary. You step outside, hair wrapped in a cloth apron tied firm. The cold air bites your cheeks and instantly makes your nose run. You sniff, wipe it with your sleeve, and join the other women near the edge of the commons, where piles of raw flax wait to be softened, beaten, scraped. Mainstream historical fact. In medieval households, flax processing was a major domestic task. Women soaked flax stalks in ponds, then dried and beat them with wooden tools called scutchers to remove the tough outer shell. What remained was fine linen fibre, highly prized for its versatility and durability. Your hands ache from the work. The rhythm is almost meditative. Strike, pull, scrape. Again. Again. Your knuckles sting from the cold. Bits of chaff cling to your face. But still there's something satisfying about coaxing softness from something so brittle. You glance around. Other women work in silence or hum tunes passed down by their mothers. A girl you don't recognise hums something haunting a tune that sounds like wind through shutters. You catch her eye. She smiles, then looks away. It's strange, this shared labour. Equal parts isolation and connection. Like you're all on separate islands but throwing stones into each other's waters. Your baby cries from the house. You freeze instinct, rising before thought. Then another woman's daughter, maybe 10 or 11, appears at the edge of the square, baby in arms, cheeks pink from the cold. She woke, the girl says, simply holding her out. You thank her and press a cold coin into her hand even though she protests. The baby latches without fuss. You lean back against a cart, watching steam rise from her head. It's then that you notice the red shawl again. Fringe tidbit. Medieval villages often had figures who lived on the fringes. Midwives, herbalists, widows. Women who seemed half feared, half respected. Superstitions surrounded them. They were said to predict births, warn of sickness, and even curse milk if offended. The old woman from the cabbage rows walks slowly past. She doesn't speak, just nods. You remember her words, don't let them knot your fate too tightly. You didn't understand them before. You're starting to now. Later that afternoon, Harwin returns early. A surprise. He smells of smoke again, and something sweeter sap wine. You ask if he's ill. He shakes his head. The stream overflowed, tannery shut till it clears. You nod. He sits, watches you nurse the baby in the glow of the hearth. She's strong, he says, not quite meeting your eyes. Like you. You don't answer. Because what can you say to that? That strength wasn't a choice. That quiet isn't always peace. Instead, you offer him a bowl of broth, he takes it, and you both sit in the hush. Historians still argue whether peasant families in medieval Europe were emotionally close or purely practical. Letters and chronicles from the elite suggest tenderness was rare, but village records hint at more nuanced husbands attending births, fathers mourning losses, mothers fiercely protecting daughters from bad matches. You've seen both. You remember the way your father never touched your mother's face, but always made sure her firewood pile was full. And now Harwin. Well, he fixes the cradle's loose hinge without being asked. He doesn't kiss your cheek, but he watches you from the corner of his eye when you lift something too heavy. Affection, perhaps, or just attention. It's hard to tell. The days blur. Your baby starts teething. You walk her at night when the ache in her gums makes her wail like a spirit. You whisper stories into her ear about stars and rivers, and the princess who turned into a goose to escape a bad marriage. She doesn't understand, but her breath slows, her fists unclench. Sometimes you forget you're barely more than a child yourself. You feel ancient until she smiles, and suddenly you're new again. The sun creeps earlier now, the kind of light that makes everything look like it's made of old parchment and melted butter. Your daughter. Yes, it feels right to call her that. Now sits wobbling on a folded quilt outside the house, cheeks plump and pink hands outstretched toward a passing chicken. You watch her and sip warm water from a clay mug. No herbs, no honey, just warmth. Sometimes that's enough. Behind you, your mother hums as she shakes out a rug. Harwin is off at the stream again, trying to rebuild the tannery's fence post. The smell of wet leather follows him like a ghost now. You no longer flinch at it. Life has settled into a rhythm. Fetch water, stir porridge, mend seams, soak linen, braid hair, walk child, quiet your thoughts. Not bliss, but manageable. You still think of that old woman. You haven't seen her since that day, but her words live in your head like a second tongue. Don't let them knot your fate too tightly. Some knots, it seems, you learn to loosen from within. Mainstream historical fact. While modern women often have access to postpartum care, medieval peasant women were expected to return to work quickly after childbirth. Records show they resumed labour both household and field within days or weeks, regardless of healing or risk. Recovery was a luxury few could afford. You did the same. Not because you're especially strong, but because there was no other option. Even so, something in you resists. Not loudly, but consistently. You teach your daughter to grip a stick and drag patterns in the mud. You hum songs she won't remember but that once helped you forget. And you pause often to just watch her, like she's a candle in a room that's always been dark. One afternoon, while gathering mint from the edge of the commons, you hear the unmistakable squeak of cartwheels. You look up. A visitor. No, a neighbour. But she carries something under her arm, a bundle of fabric with an edge of embroidery too fine for peasant hands. She stops beside you, catching her breath. I heard you can stitch, she says. Decent enough for sale. You nod slowly. She unwraps the bundle to reveal a linen tunic with delicate red threadwork at the collar. Can you match this, she asks. You run your fingers over it. It's noble clothing. Stolen, gifted, who knows? Yes, you say. She gives you a coin, not much but solid, and promises more if the work pleases. It's small, this transaction, but it feels enormous. Fringe tidbit. In late medieval Europe, there were women known as silken wives or needle mothers, semi-official seamstresses in villages who mended and embroidered clothes for wealthier families. Though technically of low status, their skill could earn them steady work and rarely independence. You go home and set to work, needle between your fingers, daughter at your feet, and the red thread dances like fire. A few days later, Harwin notices. He doesn't ask questions. He just lifts the tunic, examines the neatness of your stitches and grunts in approval. Then he walks out without another word. But that night he brings you a new needle, one finer than you've ever owned. Bone handle, still warm from his pocket. You hold it in your hand long after he's gone to sleep. It's not a declaration, not a poem. But it's something. That same night your mother stops you as you walk past the hearth. She nods toward your daughter. You're doing well, she says, then adds better than most. You blink. Praise isn't common in this house. You almost ask better how, but you know the answer. Because even if you were dragged through knots and threads and blood and silence, you came out still holding the needle. Historians still argue whether medieval women had any real agency or simply survived within rigid structures. Some believe they manipulated their roles, skillfully carving out quiet power. Others claim that survival itself was resistance. The truth, like always, lives somewhere in between. You glance at your daughter sleeping on a woven mat beside you. She's drooling on her sleeve, and still she looks like a queen. You smile, then return to your stitches. Thread, pull, anchor, knot. But this time the knots are yours. The wind changes in early autumn. Not harshly, just enough to remind you that things end. Leaves shift from green to rust. The goats grow quieter. The sky ripens into that soft, uncertain grey. It's the kind of season where even time feels like it's tucking itself away for warmth. You've finished your 6th tunic. Orders now come from women 3 villages over. They send a brother, a cousin, a barefoot boy carrying cloth and a message. Make it clean. Make it strong. We heard about your thread. Your mother smiles more. Your father less so, but he hasn't spoken of suitors since that night you first set the needle. Harwin keeps to his rhythm, tanning, fencing, bringing you odd little things, a spool of thread, a ribbon, dyed pale saffron, a bone thimble he swears he didn't steal. He doesn't say thank you, but he says you less harshly now, sometimes even gently. And your daughter, she's walking. Not steadily, not far, but walking, arms wide like a bird mouth open in a laugh so wide it swallows the world. And somehow she's safe. Mainstream historical fact. Childhood mortality rates in the medieval period were staggeringly high. Nearly 1 in 3 children died before the age of 5. Most families didn't name their babies until they survived past infancy, fearing heartbreak. Survival then was not just biology, it was miracle. You don't take her for granted. Every breath she takes feels like a tiny rebellion. She clutches your leg while you cook. She cries when the fire hisses. She tugs at your skirt when you sew. She makes a mess of herbs, chews on a stick, tries to taste a worm. And you exhausted, underfed, slightly constipated from too much barley laugh until you cry. Because this is life. Not survival, not transaction, not posture. Just life. You start writing your name on small scraps of linen hidden beneath the collars of garments you stitch. Not in case of theft, in case of memory. Because in a world where names are passed from man to man and girls vanish into marriage contracts, you want proof that you were here. That you mattered. Fringe tidbit. Some surviving medieval garments contain embroidered initials or hidden symbols inside seams, likely not for vanity but as quiet acts of identity, especially among women, especially among those whose names were otherwise lost. You even stitch your daughter's name once, though Harwin still calls her the girl. That night you sit by the fire, sewing by candlelight. Your fingers are calloused but steady. Your mother hums. Your father snores. Your daughter dreams on your lap, and the world in that moment feels soft. Like wool, like peace. Historians still argue whether women like you peasants, mothers, seamstresses left any real mark. Did they shape history or merely endure it? But the more you live, the more you feel the answer in your bones. Endurance is a shape. You finish your final seam of the night, blow out the flame and lay your head beside your daughter's. She shifts slightly, reaches toward you and sighs. You're not free, but you're not invisible either. You have a name, a trader daughter who thinks you invented the moon. You survived childbirth suitors' shame, midwives, gossip, blood fire ropes, hunger silence, and men who never asked your favourite colour. You stitched a life from scraps and made it hold. That's not just surviving. That's odd. You pull the blanket higher. The wind rattles the door once then hushes. And in that hush you whisper not to the gods, not to your husband, not to your parents, but to yourself. I am still here. And the darkness answers gently, I know. Now you can let go of the thread. Loosen your grip. Let the needle slip back into the basket into the shadows into the night. You've walked through mud and fire and tangled branches. You've dodged judgment and held your breath in silence. You've given birth in pain and in power. You've stitched identity into seams. You've stood still, and you've run. But now you can rest. Feel the cool hush settle around your shoulders like an old shawl. Feel the floor soften beneath you, turning from wood to moss to sky. Let your breath slow, not because you must hide it, but because no one's asking anymore. Not your father, not the midwife, not history itself. The world is quieter now. So much of your story was noise, shouts, orders, negotiations, doors closing. But this part is different. This part is a lullaby sung in your own voice. You have earned this stillness. Your daughter is safe. Your name is stitched into time whether anyone sees it or not. The fire is low. The night is kind. So close your eyes and let the world turn without you just for a little while.